Empire of Steel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 451 Marine Caller. P.S. There are only 4 shifts tonight. Hahaha. The serious atmosphere in the government office was broken by Xiao Ming's laughter. After dealing with it for so long, he basically solved the Ryukyu problem without bloodshed, and also found a route for trade with Europe. Stopping the laughter, Xiao Ming said to Claire, "I'm glad you can accept this condition. If you can sincerely trade with this king's fief, this king promises that your future trade in East Asia will not be damaged. On the contrary, you will get more profit. Hopefully, the ultimate goal of Dutch is trade and profit. As long as His Royal Highness can guarantee this is enough." Claire also said with a smile, nodding his head. Xiao Ming continued, "In this case, it is better for us to sign a trade agreement now to agree on the commitments of both parties." Xiao Ming said after all, he asked Yang Chengai to prepare a pen and paper to write down the results of this negotiation to form an agreement to stipulate the behavior of both parties, and Claire had no objection to this. Then the two sides discussed some issues on the details, and finally formed a paper agreement. It is clearly stated in the agreement, first, the Netherlands returned the Ryukyu Island to the Great Yu Kingdom and placed it under the name of King Key of the Great Yu Kingdom, and the King Key of the Great Yu Kingdom guaranteed the safety of the Dutch trading company's location in Relanza City and the smooth flow of trade route. Second, the Dutch Trading Company and the Qingzhou Chamber of Commerce jointly established a foreign trade department in Dengzhou. In the future, all trade must be approved by the office. Third, the city of Relanza retained 2,000 musketeers and 4 warships, and at the same time allowed the same number of troops under the name of King Key to be stationed and managed together, and the supply of the troops on both sides was responsible for themselves. Fourth, when the city of Giranja was attacked by a foreign enemy, Kitty was obliged to cooperate with the Dutch Trading Company to defend against the enemy. Write these terms one by one, and soon a piece of paper is covered with the words. After writing the treaty in the language of the Great Yu Kingdom, Xiao Ming wrote another treaty in the language of the Netherlands, and this action made Claire his jaw almost fell. "Respected His Royal Highness King Key, why do you speak our language?" Claire said. Xiao Ming said, "Then why does Rhodes speak the language of our Great Yu country? But he can only speak, not write." Claire said that Rhodes' past was not glorious. In fact, Rhodes was also a pirate in the past. It was with pirates from different countries that Rhodes mastered the great power when he was young. "Yu language, that's really unfortunate." This king learned this knowledge from a knowledgeable missionary. Xiao Ming also used this reason to prevaricate missionary? "So the flintlock pistols and artillery pieces that His Highness has mastered?" Claire said in surprise. Xiao Ming nodded affirmatively. Since they cooperated, he had to give them a reason. This must be a very knowledgeable missionary. Claire smiled wryly. He really wanted to shoot the missionary now. After a slight laugh, Xiao Ming handed the agreement to Claire. In fact, he mastered the memorization things very quickly, such as language. After all, the knowledge that needs to be recited is in the technology library. Jump out a word, or even a sentence. Now it's time for us to sign. As long as this agreement takes effect, war can be avoided. Xiao Ming said. Claire's expression became serious, and he took a deep breath. He took a quill from his pocket and signed his name on the agreement. Ryukyu Island was developed by the Dutch Trading Company, so it belongs to the wealth announced by the Dutch Trading Company, and he has the right to deal with the company's property, provided that the company's trade will not be lost. After signing the agreement, Claire pushed the agreement to Xiao Ming and said, "Now it's your turn." After taking over the agreement, Xiao Ming also signed his name. This agreement is officially in effect. He nodded with satisfaction and said, "I wish us a happy cooperation." Claire's expression is very complicated. This pact is a complete victory for the king, and a humiliation of defeat for them, which means that the era of the Dutch informing the East Asian trade routes is officially over, just as they have now lost European maritime hegemony. "I hope His Royal Highness can abide by the promise in the agreement, otherwise we Dutch will fight to the last soldier." Claire warned. Xiao Ming looked serious and said solemnly, "This king has always kept his promises." Nodding his head, Claire stood up and said, "In that case, we are waiting for His Highness in the city of Relanza." All right. Xiao Ming originally wanted Claire to stay for a meal, but he gave up because of Claire's humiliation at this time. After all, losers also have their own dignity. After seeing off Claire, Yang Chengai, who participated in the negotiation, looked at Xiao Ming with admiration and said, "I didn't expect His Highness to be so knowledgeable, and the lower officials really admire." Less flattery, do more business. This time we signed the agreement. This Deng Zhao will be the commercial port for trade with the Netherlands in the future, and the goods that come here from the Netherlands will be unloaded here, and our goods will be loaded here. Dutch ships. Since the last time Xiaoming mentioned this, Yang Changai had been looking forward to this day, and now 2 months have passed, and now he finally has a look. He said, Xiaoguan ordered to vacate the yard next to the government office and turn it into the Ministry of Foreign Trade. After speaking, Yang Changai was ready to go. He was much more anxious than Xiaoming, now shaking his head. Xiaoming walked towards Zhengyan. Now that the agreement has been signed, there are still a lot of things to do. First of all, he's going to receive the main island of Ryukyu and the bastion on the island opposite the city of Rilanso. After that, his army was stationed in the city of Duranja, and the Dutch monitored the coastal trade routes together. Thinking of this, he immediately sent someone to call Yu Yun, and it was naturally Yu Yun who controlled the flight route. Not long after returning to Zhengyan, Yu Yun rushed over. During this time, he had been leading the fleet training, and when he learned that Xiaoming had arrived in Deng Zhao, he was about to come to Xiaoming to ask about the Ryukyu issue. The Dutch surrendered? It's really boring. Yu Yun looked disappointed. He was now looking for opponents everywhere like a cockfighting cock. It's not surrender, it's just that we will have a cooperative relationship from now on, but we must be vigilant while cooperating. This is the meaning of garrisoning. Xiaoming said, so, you have to allocate some battleships to station in Ryukyu. A group of Marines will be trained for you Marines? Yu Yun's eyes lit up. This was the type of service he had always dreamed of. Chapter 452. The elegant mansion is surrounded by vermilion quarters. In the middle of the house is a pond of clear water, in which groups of carp swim leisurely. Looking at Yu Yun with a look of joy, Xiaoming nodded lightly. He did not want to set up the Marine Corps on a whim, but prepared to embark on the road of competing with the West for colonies. In the 15th and 16th centuries, Western countries established specially trained landing combat troops for overseas expansion. In the mid-17th century, Britain established a naval infantry regiment. Since then, Tsarist Russia, Portugal, France, Spain, etc. have successively established Marine Corps or Marine Corps, and they occupied a large number of colonies by using the way of Marine Corps landing operations. Now Xiaoming wants to build an army that can go out to fight with a navy. He said to Yu Yun, but going out to fight is extremely difficult. You have to choose a group of soldiers who are willing to go out to fight. This group of soldiers must have the fanaticism and absoluteness of pirates' loyalty. Yes, Your Highness. Yu Yun said solemnly. Having said this, he and Yu Yun specifically explained how to receive Ryukyu. In order to control the route, he had to send a fleet to station in Ryukyu. Without force, the merchant ships would not be safe. After receiving Xiaoming's order, Yu Yun happily went back to the military port, and Fei Yu'er came out of Zhengyan's room at this time. His Royal Highness, this house is exquisite. Fei Yu'er looked down at the carp swimming in groups in the water. Presumably the owner of this house used to be a rich man. You guessed it well. This mansion used to belong to the Su family, a local wealthy family in Deng Zhao. 2 years ago, the Su family participated in the rebellion. Chosen as the king's carriage. So it turns out, the concubines also know a little about the news that the rebellion of the 6 states was defeated by His Royal Highness. Fei Yu said, nowadays, the great power of the Great Yu Kingdom must have been extremely dangerous at the time, and His Highness was able to fight against the 6. The state tycoons are also wise and brave. Recalling what happened 2 years ago, Xiaoming sighed slightly. This king was forced to do so at the time, and the power of this king's fiefs was already weak, so that all the rich families could be eliminated smoothly. It's not going to go so well. His Royal Highness said that although the concubines are weak women, they have read some historical books. The rise and fall of this history is often caused by the division of the land by the wealthy clans and the people who have no land to cultivate. Fei Yu'er said lightly. Xiaoming smiled. He didn't think that a woman in ancient times was virtuous. To him, a virtuous helper with excellent character and learning was much better than an illiterate woman who only knew the shortcomings of her parents. He said, what you see is far-reaching, but today's Dayu kingdom is already terminally ill, and the wealthy clans are like possessed maggots, making Dayu country a hell on earth. The Qinglong King's uprising may be due to the secret deployment of the Chu King, but the real reason is that the people cannot survive, and it is impossible to change without a bloody storm. Now Fei Yu'er sighed. She just accidentally remembered this because of this house. Seeing that Xiaoming was a little heavy on this topic, she immediately changed the topic and said, has the negotiation between Your Highness and the Dutch come to a conclusion? It has been negotiated. From now on, Ryukyu will be ours. Xiao Ming laughed. Fei Yu'er also laughed, happy for Xiao Ming's fulfillment, and then she said, "Your Highness, since the negotiation went so smoothly, what are we going to do next in Deng Zhao?" After thinking about it, Xiao Ming said, "This king is going to take you to explore the sea." "The sea?" Fei Yu'er suddenly became excited. She lived in Chang'an for a long time and had only heard of the majesty of the sea, but she had never seen the true face of the sea. Speaking of this, the topic of the two immediately became more and more, and Xiao Ming carefully talked to Fei Yu'er about the beauty of the ocean under the action of the technology spar. Beautiful pictures appeared in Fei Yu'er's mind. Taking the opportunity, Xiao Ming talked to Fei Yu'er about the creatures in the sea again, which made Fei Yu'er sometimes amazed, expect, and sometimes fear. Now that the negotiation has been reached, Xiao Ming naturally has no government affairs that he is eager to reach. He came to Deng Zhao this time for negotiation, and another purpose is to check the implementation of coastal defense, marine fishing and salt pans in Deng Zhao. In the past few months, after a night of rest in Xinjiang, Xiao Ming took Feiyu to the military port the next day. Yesterday, he and Yu Yun talked about going to sea. "Today, Your Highness, Princess, please." Yu Yun respectfully invited Xiao Ming and Fei Yu'er to board the title of King Qi. After returning yesterday, he was preparing for this. The two boarded the deck. At this time, Xiao Ming asked, "Are there any fishing boats going out to sea today? This king would like to taste the taste of seafood." Hearing this, Yu Yun laughed, and he said to Xiao Ming, "Your Highness, the fishing boats go out to sea every day, and today is the same. The last will prepare to take His Highness, the princess and the fishing boat to sea today, and they will be able to go out to sea at that time. Eat seafood on board anytime." Wonderful. Xiao Ming was in a happy mood. The natural environment of this area is basically not destroyed, especially at sea. Xiao Ming was looking forward to tasting the pure natural delicacy. Everything was ready. King Qi sailed out of the military port at the sound of the sailing bell. The King Qi was followed by 5 warships. This was prepared by Yu Yun to protect Xiao Ming. This time Xiao Ming and the princess went to sea together. Pressure before the battleship. There were 5 fishing boats that were converted from large merchant ships. These large fishing boats were operated by fishermen recruited by Deng Zhao. In order to make the fishing boats play the role of fishing as soon as possible, Yang Chengai recruited experienced fishermen. These fishermen have extensive sea fishing experience and know the distribution of fish in each area of the sea. His Royal Highness, since these fishermen have used trawling nets, they can bring back a whole boat of fish each time they go out to sea. Now these fishermen have great admiration for His Highness. Today is to go out to sea. Yu Yun's mood is also relatively relaxed, and he begins to gossip with Xiao Ming. Really? In this way, this king will feel at ease, and Deng Zhao fishing seems to be no problem. Xiao Ming laughed. Fei Yu'er on the side didn't seem to hear the conversation between Xiao Ming and Yu Yun, but focused on admiring the blue sea. Looking up from time to time to the seagulls hovering over the battleship and the dolphins that rose from time to time in the blue ocean made Fei Yu'er's eyes wide open. Starting from the military port, the fishing boat has been sailing north. According to Yu Yun, the abalone in the north of Long Island is very delicious, and they are going to the north of Long Island to catch abalone. Xiao Ming is not familiar with Long Island at all. This is the small island in the northern part of Deng Zhao. After sailing at sea for half an hour, an island gradually appeared in front of everyone. Seeing this island, everyone became excited. It was only when the fleet was about to bypass the island and continue to go north, 6 warships suddenly appeared at the turn of the island. Guerrilla Water Master, Yu Yun's expression suddenly turned cold. Chapter 453 Trap. P.S. There is one more chapter. What's wrong? Looking at the 6 battleships that appeared, Xiao Ming said when they saw these 6 battleships, the fishing boats in front turned in panic like a mouse seeing a cat, trying to escape from these battleships. There was hatred in Yu Yun's eyes and a hint of bloodthirsty at the same time. He said to Xiao Ming, "Your Highness, these battleships are Koryo battleships from Bisha City. We used to go fishing and were bullied by Koryo battleships. They are very domineering. They will chase our fishing boats as long as they see them. Many fishermen were killed by them, and the fishing boats were burnt down. They claim that this sea area is all Koryo and we are not allowed to fish. In this history book, it is said that Gaoli is a barbarian. It's true. I think they were respectful to us when they were still part of the Great Yu Kingdom. Now they turn to the barbarians, but they are so cruel to us." Suffocating. Xiao Ming looked at Fei Yu'er with some surprise, and said that Fei Yu'er was a woman who is not allowed to be a man. In this kind of patriotism, Fei Yu'er was indeed not comparable to ordinary women. Yu Yun was also shocked by Fei Yu'er's words. With admiration in his eyes, the princess has a high opinion, so now that the fleet has begun to take shape, this king wants to be the first to clean up Gaoli and let them know who this sea area is. Xiao Ming's eyes narrowed at this time. The 6 battleships from Korea also seemed to have seen Xiao Ming and his party, but instead of retreating, these Korea battleships rushed towards this side. Princess is dangerous here, you should take refuge in the cabin for a while. Xiao Ming said to Fei Yue originally. He was in a good mood today, but it was all mixed up by this Korea battleship. Fei Yue understood that staying on the deck at this time would only distract Xiao Ming. She nodded and went to the cabin, but she was not worried about the safety of the fleet, because she knew the strength of the fleet through the binoculars. Xiao Ming looked at the Korea battleship opposite, which was the typical Korea battleship Panaxia. This kind of boardhouse ship is huge and can carry nearly 100 people. It sails at a slow speed, but only a few dozen sailors can operate flexibly in battle. During this period, the guerrilla navy often used the Panaquin as the main warship. Continuing to observe, Xiao Mingzi saw more than 100 guerrilla soldiers on the deck of the Panhuachuan. Some of these soldiers were holding bows and arrows, some were holding swords, and some archers were shooting at a fishing boat. The Pinocchio is not a sailing warship. The main power comes from the wood pulp in the lower cabin. At this time, the oars below the Pinocchio are shaken by the boatmen in the boat to chase the fishing boat. His Royal Highness, are you attacking now? Yu Yun said. Xiao Ming was a little confused. He said, are these guerrilla soldiers crazy? Didn't they see our battleship? Why are they so arrogant? His Royal Highness, these Koryo soldiers probably thought that we were also fishing boats, because there has never been a battleship in Dengzhou, and there are not many soldiers on our deck, neither wearing armor nor holding swords. Yu Yun said. Xiao Ming nodded and said, in that case, let's play with these guerrilla warships. Now we are disguised as fishing boats and wait for the king's orders to act. Yes, Your Highness. Yu Yun said. The fishing boat in front quickly approached Xiao Ming's battleship under the pursuit of the Koryo battleship. The Koryo battleship was still in hot pursuit. At this time, Xiao Ming ordered all the gunners on the battleship to prepare, and at the same time let the crew on the deck take the flint hair. The gun loaded and hide under the ship's side waiting for orders on the Banwu ship. A general wearing scale armor and a helmet was inspecting the somewhat too large ship of the Great Yu Kingdom. They had never seen this kind of ship before, with tall hulls and too many sails. No such ships had ever appeared in either the Japanese country or the Great Yu country. General Park, these fishing boats seem to be frightened by us. A lieutenant said with a smile, now the fishing boats in the Great Yu Kingdom have become so big, it would be a pity if they were burnt this time. It would be better to grab them directly. It's not supposed to reward us. Park Zhanghao frowned. This time they were instructed to supervise the fishing boat to come to Long Island to pick abalone and present it to the king. At this time, their fishing boat was fishing for abalone on the side of Long Island. At this moment, a fisherman who was fishing for abalone in the sea told them that a fishing boat was coming from the south, so they rushed over immediately, because it must be a fishing boat from the Great Yu Kingdom for them. Changdao is now the origin of the abalone specially provided by the Koryo royal family. They absolutely do not allow the fishermen of Dao to fish here, even though Changdao is more than 200 miles away from Korea and only 30 miles away from Dao. Something's wrong. These fishing boats are a little too big, and the fishing boats in front have all run away. Why didn't they run? Park Zhanghao refuted the lieutenant general's statement. The failure of the Golden Horde Khanate in the Great Yu Kingdom is now well known. And now this area seems to be the territory of the King Qi of the Great Yu Kingdom, which makes him have some doubts because a vassal king who can defeat the Golden Horde is a serious threat to Korea. But the territory of this vassal king and guerrilla are only across the sea. General Park, when did your courage become so small? Who doesn't know what the Great Yu Kingdom looks like? Don't think too much. You see that none of the people above are wearing armor and holding weapons. They must be fishing boats or merchant ships. If General Park doesn't launch an attack, he will have to command the soldiers himself. The deputy general said strangely. Park Zhanghao's face suddenly became extremely ugly. This lieutenant came from the imperial city and had a deep background. Although his position was lower than his own, he had always disobeyed orders. Lieutenant General Jin, for the sake of safety, it is better to send a striker to test it out. Although he was very unhappy with the lieutenant general, Park Zhanghao still did not want to risk the life of the soldier. Vice Admiral Jin snorted and said, okay, let the 4 warships go forward to arrest them. With that said, he ordered the battleship to attack. At this time, the 4 warships slid their oars, and the Panwu ship moved closer to the ship of the Great Yu Kingdom. When they approached, They found that the people on the ship were hiding in horror, which made them relax their vigilance again, seeing that they were getting closer and closer, as the ship gave an order. The soldiers on the Banwu immediately threw their hooks and hooked the ship of the Great Yu Kingdom. Kill. The boat was hooked, and the guerrilla soldiers immediately jumped up because it basically amounted to capturing the huge ship, but their excitement immediately turned to fear. Boom, a deafening sound rang out, and the whole Panwu ship tilted from the side of the Great Yu Kingdom ship, as if the ship was about to fall. The loud noise nearly deafened the Koryo soldiers on the panic ship, and when they were standing unsteadily, a row of people suddenly stood up on the side of the ship. The flames were mixed with loud noises, and the guerrilla soldiers on the boathouse fell in pieces. Chapter 454 Captured. P.S. During the Chinese New Year, there are too many things to visit relatives and friends. During this time, Snail will try to update it as much as possible. The minimum is 3. Please write down the few chapters. Snail will definitely make up. I hope everyone understands. We'll try to do as much as possible. Trap, it's a trap. In the distance, Vice Admiral Jin's legs were trembling, and the thunder-like sound made him completely panic. Park Zhanghao was also pale, but he still remained calm, and he immediately shouted, "Retreat!" At this time, the 4 battleships that attacked were on the sides of the ships of the Great Yu Kingdom. In the flames and roars, these battleships swayed in the sea like rootless duckweeds. Is this the artillery? Park Zhanghao's eyes narrowed. The war between the Great Yu Kingdom and the Golden Horde had reached Gaoli, and they learned the news of the artillery. No matter what it is, we are definitely not opponents. Let's run away. Deputy General Jin shouted, "Row away, row away." The sound of gunfire continued, and after one round of firing, the artillery continued to reload for the second round of firing. However, after just one round of shooting, the boatmen in the cabin of the Panic were basically killed and injured. Boom, another round of salvo. The solid shells penetrated aboard of the Panic ship along the muzzle like tofu, and the shells entered the cabin and destroyed everything in the cabin. Blood splattered all over the bottom of the cabin like ink. Bang bang. The shooting on the deck continued. At this time, the Koryo soldiers were completely in a state of panic. They were continuously killed by flintlock guns. Some soldiers jumped into the sea because they were too scared. Some soldiers knelt directly on the deck and chose to surrender. The descendants do not kill. At this time, Yu Yun shouted at the soldiers on the Banwu boat, and at the same time a banner with the words, "Whoever descends will not be killed," was raised high. Seeing this flag, more guerrilla soldiers knelt on the deck and chose to surrender. Guerrilla has always used the language of the Great Yu Kingdom. Although the soldiers speak different words from the Great Yu Kingdom, some people who can read can still understand the words. After the bombardment of the number theory, the Pinocchio has lost its power and now can only wait to die. Your Highness, 2 boats have escaped. Yu Yun said, "Do you want to catch up now?" "No need, let them go back and report." This king wants to let the king of Koryo live in a state of anxiety. Xiao Ming smiled lightly, and now Koryo is just a fat sheep to him. In the future, he will turn Korea into a place for exporting his own goods and a source of slaves, but now is not the time to start a war with Korea. After all, the priority is Ryukyu. After all, there is a large amount of sugarcane on Ryukyu now, and at this time Ryukyu is also a place where 3-season rice can be grown, which is very important to him, because it means that he will have a high-yield grain area. And according to Claire, there are 200,000 natives of the Gaoshan tribe in Taiwan, plus the people who migrated from Dae to the main island of Ryukyu. These 200,000 people are mainly distributed in the southern part of Ryukyu and are currently under the control of the Dutch. For Xiaoming, the population of 200,000 is not much, and most of them are Gaoshan people who are difficult to control, but Xiaoming doesn't care about this population. Because once he masters Ryukyu, he can completely encourage the people of the Great Yu country opposite Ryukyu to immigrate. After all, the people in this area are all under the control of the royal family. As long as he finds a way to get Xiao Wangsun to agree to immigrate to 100,000 people, this place will continue to provide him with food output. While Xiaoming was thinking about it, Yu Yun had already ordered the soldiers to detain the surrendered Koryo soldiers onto the boat. The crew of the Pinokshan boats died 7-88, completely losing their power. Even if these guerrilla soldiers did not surrender, they could only starve to death at sea. Go. The crew held the flintlock guns against the guerrilla soldiers and escorted these soldiers into the cabin to take care of them. There are more than 400 soldiers in the 4 Pinocchio boats, and now there are less than 100 people left of these 400 people. Most of the soldiers died under the blows and flintlock guns. These surrendered soldiers were like frightened rabbits. Their eyes were dull, and their bodies were trembling before the 4 Panwu boats fell silent under the shelling. Xiao Ming said, "It's good to pull these boats back later and repair them for fishing." "Yes, Your Highness." Yu Yun said with a smile. This battle is simply a one-sided situation. When he came back to his senses, the battle was basically over, and there was no difficulty at the end of the battle. He counted the soldiers, none of them were wounded, they just wasted some ammunition and countered the war. Xiao Ming naturally lost the mood to taste seafood. He let the fishing boat continue to fish, and he and Yu Yun dragged the boardhouse boat back to the military port. After getting off the boat, Fei Yuer's face was still a little pale, and the artillery frightened her. "It's okay." Xiao Ming chose to return to Dengzhou City. Just because of Gunian's feelings for Fei Yuer, His Royal Highness, I'm fine. Fei Yuer showed a meaningful smile. She didn't want Xiao Ming to worry. Although she hadn't seen the battle scene, the sound of the artillery and the desperate screams of the soldiers made her well aware of how brutal the battle was at that time. Just these voices made her tremble. Fei Yuer's expression made Xiao Ming understand that she was just comforting him, but he also knew that sooner or later, as his princess, he would have to go through this, so that Fei Yuer could face calmly in the future. He took Fei Yuer back to Xingyan, and after placing her to rest, Xiao Ming returned to the military port again. "His Royal Highness, the prisoners are all here," Yu Yun said, pointing to the Koryo soldier kneeling on the ground. Xiao Ming nodded and asked, "Who of you can speak the words of the Great Yu Kingdom?" Because Goryeo was once a vassal of the Great Yu Kingdom, many Koreans could speak the language of the Great Yu country. As soon as his voice fell, a person like a general said, I will." Yu Yun immediately escorted the guerrilla soldier in the general's costume to Xiao Ming. Knowing the enemy and knowing yourself can be successful in 100 battles. Xiao Ming never underestimates any enemy, because there are too many things that capsize in the gutter. He asked, "Who is the king of your guerrilla now?" "Our king's surname is Li." Gaoli general said tremblingly. Xiao Ming asked again, "How many sailors do you have? How many warships do you have?" 15,000 people, 120 warships. The guerrilla general said again. Yu Yun was a little surprised when he heard the words. He said, "Your Highness, there are quite a lot of sailors in Gaoli." Xiao Ming nodded, which is why he didn't rashly go to war. He then asked, "Are all these ships?" No. In addition to this kind of ship, we also have a turtle ship." General Guerrilla said. "Turtle boat? What kind of boat is this?" Yu Yun asked. Before the Koryo general could speak, Xiao Ming explained, "This is a ship used to ram local warships." Chapter 455, Chrysanthemum Island. "Your Highness, what to do with these prisoners?" After some questioning, General Gao Li told everything he knew. At this time, Yu Yun asked the soldiers to put away the bayonet. "How did they treat our fishermen?" Xiao Ming looked stern. "Everyone they took back became slaves," Yu Yun said bitterly. He already knew that many of the Japanese pirates along the coast were disguised as Koryo soldiers, and he hated Koryo even more at this time. This king said, "Anyone who was captured by them became slaves," Yu Yun said with hatred. He already knew that many of the Japanese pirates along the coast were disguised as Koryo soldiers. At this time, he hated Koryo even more. They were slaves. Xiao Ming said yes. Yu Yun sneered twice, raised his hand, and the soldiers drove these Koryo prisoners to the salt field with flintlock guns with bayonets. After relieving his hatred a little, Yu Yun said again, "Your Highness, since the barbarians entered the customs, this guerrilla has often bullied our people in the country of Daewoo, and has dominated the surrounding fishing grounds very domineeringly. Now that the fleet has initially been built, it is also time to give these two-faced guerrilla a little lesson." This is exactly what this king is thinking. From now on, you will send warships to cruise the sea. As long as you encounter ships from Korea and Japan, you can attack them. Xiao Ming's expression was cold. The coastal Japanese pirates have a long history, and this has always been a headache for the Great Yu Kingdom. Whether it is a real Japanese pirate, a Japanese pirate disguised by guerrilla, or a Japanese pirate disguised by a businessman in the Great Yu Kingdom, all coastal cities and shipping routes will pose a serious threat. Now that he has signed a trade agreement with the Dutch, his merchant ships will soon transport goods to the south of the Great Yu Kingdom along the sea and land. At this time, he must consider the safety of the merchant ships. It was for this reason that he made this decision. Yu Yun nodded excitedly when he heard the words. He had long imagined that there would be such a day, and now the era of the Great Yu Kingdom ruling the ocean has finally come. Speaking of this, the two talked about some issues with the battleship cruising. In fact, the problem is very simple. Like modern times, the cruising of warships has only one purpose, which is to fight pirates and protect trade routes. Because the ocean is very wide, it is impractical for all the warships to act together, So he split the warships into 2 or 3 warships into a formation. Each formation is responsible for cruising in a specific sea area, so that his current fleet can completely cover the routes of East Asia, thus keeping the routes firmly in his hands. Of course, this battleship cruising is just the beginning. Next, he will monopolize maritime trade and become a sea coachman in East Asia like the Dutch. Only his merchant ships can transfer goods from different countries and make profits at sea. However, this goal is still somewhat difficult to implement. Without a fierce war, he may not be able to make Korea and Japan recognize his maritime hegemony. Although he wanted to start the war now, the reality he faced was that the number of warships was still too small. The Galen ship is not omnipotent, and its flexibility at sea is not too high. It is still very dangerous to face hundreds of warships. So he is waiting for the launch of 24 third-class sailing warships this year. In this way, he has 39 battleships, so that a fleet of this size can handle naval battles with ease, and there is no need to worry about the Dutchmen stabbing knives in the back. People who are not of our race will have different hearts. Xiao Ming will not believe in the Dutch just because he signed an agreement. The only eternal interests between countries are interests. The battleship cruising route was agreed upon, and Yu Yun was planning to implement it in the near future. For the time being, the fleet's function was only to protect the trade route. After leaving the military port, Xiao Ming returned to Xingyuan. Along the way, he began to think about the next East Asian strategic issues. If he was still living in modern times, Xiao Ming would naturally not think so much, but now as the prince of the Great Yu Kingdom, he must find a bright future for his fief. After encountering the Koryo battleship at sea this time, Xiao Ming's determination to attack Koryo and destroy its navy became even more determined. He is not just to teach guerrilla, but because attacking guerrilla is an important part of his control of the barbarians, and because he cannot destroy guerrilla's navy, he cannot directly attack the barbarian hinterland by garrisoning troops on Juhu Island. This Juhu Island, also known as Chrysanthemum Island, is the largest island in the contemporary Liaodong Bay. During the Ming Dynasty, the navy of Juhu Island was led by the guerrilla Golden Crown. The first function is to guard the food and equipment on the island. The second is to cooperate with Liu Shi's plan to restore the lost land in Liaodong. The third is to defend the city of Ningyin. According to the literature, those who build 8 Li build the key point of Ningyin, and more importantly, guard the 40,000 of 8 Li. Ningyuan's rush is at an angle with Juhu Island. And when the robbers peek into the city, the soldiers on the island will go out of the way, burn their pontoon bridge, and circle behind them to attack them horizontally later. In order to compete for this island and the Ming Dynasty, the Jin army launched the Battle of Huizhou Island, which shows the importance of the geographical location of this Juhu Island. Now Xiao Ming also values this place. If you want to attack the barbarian hinterland and cooperate with a fortress advance strategy, this place will be very suitable today. The northern barbarians have always been the biggest threat to King Xiao on land. Although he has been developing the navy during this time, his arrangements for the barbarians have never stopped. In the last battle of Jizhao, Beishan's life and death were unknown, but after that, the barbarians seemed to have died down and fell silent. This apparent calm made Xiao Ming more and more uneasy. Before a storm came, it was always unusually calm, and he didn't want to imagine the worst. It is precisely because of this worry that the worst-case scenario is envisaged. At this time, the maritime trade route is particularly important. If his fiefs lose external support, maritime trade will be his last straw. Back in Xingyuan, Fei Yu'er was feeding the fish by the pond, and her relaxed look proved that she had calmed down His Royal Highness. Seeing Xiao Ming coming back, Fei Yu'er got up with a smile. Xiao Ming walked over and asked, "Isn't today's event scare you? His Royal Highness has underestimated the concubine." The concubine was not frightened, but felt seasick. Fei Yu'er said rather embarrassedly, "Seasick?" Xiao Ming was dumbfounded. "Why didn't you tell this king before going to sea? My concubine is afraid of disturbing His Highness's interest, and since I have lived in Chang'an for a long time, I have never seen what happened in the sea. I really want to follow His Highness to see it." Fei Yu'er said. Xiao Ming patted Fei Yu'er's head. "No wonder you rarely talk along the way and your face is pale. That's fine. This king thought it was the naval battle that scared you." Fei Yu'er became more and more embarrassed. She said, "His Royal Highness can face barbarians in King Xiao without any fear. As the wife of His Highness, how can I let the soldiers see a joke?" Xiao Ming nodded. Fei Yu'er looked more and more like a princess. The two were joking and laughing when the servant outside the door came over and said, "Your Highness, Governor Yang is asking for a meeting outside. He said that the fishing boat that was fishing has returned." Chapter 456, Fisherman and number 039, S. Gratitude. Yang Changai was waiting outside the line with the fish basket. In the fish basket are the Long Island abalone that the fishermen have just caught from Long Island before the barbarians entered the customs. Long Island had always been a fishing area for Deng Xiao fishermen, but after that, Long Island was often visited by Korean mariners because of the Long Island abalone. Here the abalone in this ocean has always been famous for its delicious taste. Abalone caught along the coast are often sent to the palace as a tribute. Previously, Long Island abalone was often selected as a royal tribute and sent to the palace. The emperors and concubines of the Great Yu Kingdom liked to eat, as did the kings and concubines of Korea. Before that, fishermen from both sides often clashed near this Long Island, but Korea became a barbarian vassal state and never again. Concerned, he directly sent sailors to drive away and kill the fishermen of the Great Yu Kingdom. The fishermen in Deng Xiao are sad but have no choice, because there is not a decent sailor in this land of Deng Xiao, and until now they have finally seen Long Island abalone again. The fishermen who went to sea this time followed Yang Changai. After delivering the abalone to the government office, these people must follow Yang Changai to thank King Qi. These fishermen have been living very aggrieved these years. The door is the sea, but they are either bullied by Japanese pirates or Koreans. Today's battle at sea made these fishermen burst into tears, and now they finally feel a sense of being protected. Inspector Yang, please. The servant returned from Xiaoming and said at this time, Yang Changai said to the crowd, everyone, come in with me. His Highness is inside. The fisherman nodded and followed Yang Changai into the temporary carriage, where he saw Xiaoming who was waiting by the water of the carriage. See Your Highness, Your Majesty. I kowtowed to His Royal Highness King Qi. When Yang Changai bowed and saluted, the fishermen were about to kneel and kowtow. At this time, Xiaoming stepped forward and helped the old man in front of him, and said, although our country of Great Yu has been repeatedly humiliated by foreigners, and now it is gradually weakening, but we have established our country since our ancestors. The people don't need to kneel to the royal family, everyone should get up. The old man standing at the front was born with a thin body, his skin was a little dark due to the sea breeze blowing all the year round, and his wrinkled face had a hint of sadness. At this time, he looked excited. Your Highness, I will wait for you. I sent Long Island abalone. In the past, this Long Island abalone was a tribute to the imperial court. We haven't dared to go to Long Island for many years. Thank you, Your Highness, for venting your anger for us, Deng Xiao fishermen. The old man's words are out of the question. It is the duty of this king to protect the people of the fief and allow everyone to go fishing freely at sea, so why should I thank you? Xiaoming said with a smile. The old man's thin palms rubbed each other. That being said, only His Highness can give us fishermen shelter. Now everyone is very grateful to His Highness, and we have to thank His Highness in person to express our hearts. Your thoughts are taken by this king. It is the responsibility of the doctor to protect the family and the country, down to the ladies. If you don't send your sons into this navy, how can this king's soldiers control the warship? So I want to thank you, and this king also wants to thank you. Xiaoming seemed approachable, and these words filled the faces of the fishermen with simple smiles. The old man looked relieved. He turned his head and said to the people behind him, it is said that His Highness loves the people like a son, and it is true when I see it today, and everyone will have a good life in the future. The other fishermen nodded when they heard this. Yang Chengai's eyes flashed with excitement. In Deng Xiao, these fishermen were the most sturdy group of people. They fought against Japanese pirates at sea and sold illicit salt. They were very courageous. These fishermen were the most troublesome to him during the years in power in Deng Xiao. When he recruited these fishermen for the sake of fishing, many fishermen still sneered, and some even said that the fishing boat was not good enough. Now, seeing with their own eyes that the fleet of Deng Xiao was chopping melons and vegetables to clean up Iridia's warships, these fishermen almost jumped up with excitement. One by one, Master Dong, I have seen Your Highness. Now it's time for His Highness to taste this Long Island abalone. Yang Chengai laughed at this time. Yes, yes. The old man known as Liao Zhengdong smiled and said, Your Highness, so I won't bother you anymore, and leave everyone, walk slowly. Xiaoming smiled and cupped his hands. The people had a steel scale in their hearts. They could come to thank Xiaoming in person, which showed that Xiaoming became more and more popular in Deng Xiao. The response of the people is itself a barometer of the effectiveness of its governance. After the people left, Yang Chengai said to Xiaoming, Congratulations to Your Highness for winning the heart and getting the abalone. When Xiaoming heard this, his face was weird, and he always felt that this sentence was a bit weird. Looking at Yang Chengai's serious face, he said, Don't be flattering, It's your credit that Deng Xiao has such an atmosphere today. Stay tonight and eat this Long Island abalone together. Yang Chengai drooled when he heard the words, and his best was this one. Because of this, he chose to go to Deng Xiao to be an official at the beginning. Unable to resist this huge temptation, Yang Chengai nodded, His Royal Highness, besides this abalone, the fishermen have also caught a lot of fish this time, and they will be delivered right away. It is not easy for your Royal Highness to make a trip to Deng Xiao, so let's enjoy it this time. This is delicious in the sea, but I would like to thank your Highness for this. Without His Highness's trawling nets, fishing boats would not be able to catch such fish. These fishermen admire His Highness very much for this. They say that if there is a large fishing boat with trawl nets, the village does not have to worry about food and clothing. Xiao Ming nodded. This trawling is the modern way of fishing in the ocean. This trawling is a pocket-shaped fishing net, which he taught Yang Chengai. This kind of fishing net is dragged on the sea by fishing boats. Now his fishing boats are all fishing nets made of this kind of rope, which can catch a lot of fish at a time. Compared with traditional fishing, casting nets and other methods, trawling directly improves the fishing efficiency dozens of times. That being the case, you can tell them that this king's merchant ships are clearly priced. If they want to buy them, this king can sell them to them. Xiao Ming pondered for a while and said, sell to fishermen? Yang Chengai asked in disbelief. That's right, the development of Deng Xiao's fishery relies on numerous fishermen. The power of the masses is strong. Otherwise, relying on this king's fishing boats will not be able to satisfy the market of the great Yu kingdom. Xiao Ming said for him, the next step is to revitalize the fief's economy, and to make the economy come alive is to open up private capital. The fishing must be opened up, and the production of other commodities must be opened up. Only when it is profitable and obtains immediate benefits, the people will put all their enthusiasm into the business, and the business in King Xiao will truly come alive, and the business will come alive. People will be rich. Money can promote consumption, consumption will promote the further development of industry, and at the same time provide a lot of taxation for the fief. Chapter 457, Beishan reappears. The aroma that makes one's tongue thirsty emerges from the dining room of the Xingyun Long Island abalone is being turned into a delicacy under Pao Ling's meticulous cooking. Originally, Yang Chengai and Xiao Ming were chatting, but being attacked by this fragrance, no one could stand it. Whether it is study or government affairs, the right way is to combine work and rest, so it is not that Xiao Ming has become lazy, but that he has understood the balance between life and work. After half an hour, the maid finally brought out the braised abalone from the pantry. It's delicious. When he saw the braised abalone, Yang Chengai's eyeballs almost fell. This kind of abalone was something he had never seen before. His usual way of eating it was to boil it in water. This time, the pantry cooked a total of 20 abalones, which are called the gold of the table and the crown of Haishun in modern times, which shows the deliciousness of abalone. When he saw these Long Island abalones, Xiao Ming understood why these abalones were listed as tribute, because all the abalones caught by these fishermen were one abalone. As we all know, the fewer heads of abalone, the more precious it is, because it means that the weight of abalone is already the best in modern times, and the current Long Island abalone is simply a higher level. Such a top-quality abalone is probably hard to see even at state banquets. The environment in this era is really good. Xiao Ming said with emotion, only such a natural environment can raise such abalone gudong. Yang Chengai swallowed directly. Xiao Ming shook his head and gave 10 of them to Yang Chengai. Take these for points. Thank you, Your Highness. Yang Chengai consciously lost his temper and was a little embarrassed. The maid had already packed the abalone in the food box. After taking the food box, Yang Chengai thanked him and walked back impatiently. At this time, his heart was already like a cat's paw. After Yang Chengai left, Xiao Ming rubbed his hands together and asked the maid to bring the abalone to the bedroom, while Fei Yuer was waiting for him in the room. Princess, delicious food is here. Xiao Ming said with a smile. Fei Yuer had never eaten Haizhen before, and she was very curious at this time. She said, Your Highness, is this really edible? Of course, it is not only edible, but also very delicious. Xiao Ming picked up an abalone and brought it to Fei Yuer's mouth. After taking a light bite, Fei Yuer chewed it carefully, and the expression on her face became more and more surprised. The next bite she took a large piece and ate it, and finally picked it up and ate it by herself. Xiao Ming had a smile on his face, and he devoured it himself. The size of this Long Island abalone was big enough for them to eat at the same time. He thought that sending such delicious food to Xiao Wengshun in the palace would definitely be a joy, and it might be easier to talk about the immigration by himself at this time. Yang Chengai walked towards the government office with a food box like a thief, but he bumped into Yu Yun, who came back from the military port before he walked far. Seeing Yang Chengai, Yu Yun frowned and came over to say hello, and said, "Yang Shishi, have you seen Mr. Duong? This old man is also, not a single Long Island abalone was left for me. Elder Duong seems to be going back." Yang Chengai had the food box behind him, his forehead was sweating, but he had his own thoughts. Yu Yun seemed a little disappointed. He muttered, "It's a pity after all." He turned to leave, but suddenly he stopped. Suddenly, smelled the smell in the air, and Yu Yun immediately noticed Yang Chengai's abnormality. "Chief Yang, this smell can't deceive me. You are secretly hiding abalone, and I don't want to go to the Highness to complain." Yu Yun stretched his head to look behind Yang Chengai and saw a food box. Yang Chengai complained secretly, so he had to honestly take out the food box and said, "This is given to us by His Highness. You can know about this matter, and you can't say it again after all." The two looked at each other and smiled like a fox. No one could resist this tribute-level abalone. In Bisha City, Park Zhanghao led the two remaining battleships back, and the horror of the battleship of the Great Yu Kingdom on Long Island seemed to be still in front of us, lingering like a nightmare. The soldiers on the battleship, like him, got off the ship one by one like sleepwalking. "General Park, we must tell the king about this now, otherwise we will be blamed for failing to bring back the tribute this time. Don't forget, this time the abalone is going to be given to Bishante to make up his body. Use it." Vice Admiral Jin said nervously. Park Zhanghao's brows furrowed. He knew the seriousness of this problem. Offending this Bishan is more serious than offending the king. The reason why Bisha Cheng is still in the hands of Guerrilla is because of his flattery to this Bishanteji. It's still in place, otherwise they can only retreat to the peninsula. Now looking at Lieutenant General Jin, whose face was pale with fright, Park Zhanghao sighed bitterly and said, "What we should worry about now is not the tribute, but the safety of Guerrilla. Haven't you seen the flaming warships of the Great Yu Kingdom? Now these warships are in the waters beyond Guerrilla, and from now on we will lose the fishing grounds of Long Island, and we should meet the king and tell him what we have seen. You're right, it's not our fault. It's all because the battleships of the Great Yu Kingdom are too strong. Wang won't blame us, and Beishanteji won't blame us either." Vice Admiral Jin seemed to have found an excuse. As they were talking, a group of cavalrymen came towards them in the distance. When they saw the pair of cavalrymen, their expressions changed. They were the cavalrymen of the Golden Horde. Now Beishanteji and King Guerrilla are both in Bisha Cheng. It was because of Bixin's order that the king of Guerrilla came to Bixa Cheng from Seoul. "Have you brought back the tribute to Teji?" the barbarian led by him asked coldly. Vice Admiral Jin was so frightened that his legs were trembling, and he was speechless. Park Zhanghao paused and said, "No, we were attacked by a battleship from the Great Yu Kingdom." Crack. Just as Pu Zhanghao finished speaking, the barbarian cavalry's whip slapped Pu Zhanghao's face fiercely. A bloodstain appeared on Pu Zhanghao face, and Pu Zhanghao stumbled back 3 steps. Seeing this, Deputy General Jin fell to the ground in fright. "What's the matter?" At this moment, 2 people, surrounded by soldiers, appeared at the Bisha city pier. Seeing the 2 of them, Deputy General Jin climbed to the feet of King Guerrilla like a guard and begged, "Forgive your life, King." King Guerrilla was a middle-aged man with a slightly bloated body, and it was by son standing beside him. "Teji, these dog slaves didn't bring back the tribute." "Damn it," said the cavalry general. When King Guerrilla heard the words, his face became extremely ugly, and he smiled flatteringly at Beishan, and King Guerrilla said angrily, "What the hell is going on with Park Zhanghao? Even this trivial thing can't be done. What's your fault, King? It's not that we are doing bad things, it's that we encountered the navy of the Great Yu Kingdom. These navy's warships have the flag of King Ki on them, and they are probably King Ki's army." King Ki. Beishan said these 2 words hoarsely. The killing intent in his eyes seemed to be able to spew out. Chapter 458. Beishan and number 039, S. Ambition. The wound on the middle finger is still aching. Beishan still had a fresh memory of the humiliation he suffered in the Battle of Jizhao. The Blood Wolf tribe lost more than half of the last fiasco, and the guilt of losing Shanhaiguan made his father Khan furious. If it wasn't for his mother and the leader of the Tula tribe to plead for mercy, he would have to use his life to atone for his sins instead of cutting off the 3 fingers of his left hand. After that, he was ordered to surrender his military power. Now he can only live in Guerrilla and nominally supervise this vassal state. Forget it, it's not his fault. King Ki of the Great Yu Kingdom is not so easy to deal with. Beishan forcibly suppressed his anger, and rolled his eyes. With his sensitive sense of war, He felt that a war seemed to getting closer when King Guerrilla heard the words. He shouted to Park Zhenghao, Baishante has kindly spared you all, and I will step down without thanking you. Deputy General Jin immediately kowtowed, and Park Zhenghao also knelt down, turning his head to look at Baishan's thoughtful expression. King Guerrilla breathed a sigh of relief. He really didn't want to punish his generals for this matter. After all, they were his generals no matter what at this time. Baishan looked at the sea in the south and said to the king of Guerrilla, how long does it take to get from here to Dengju, back to Taiji? It's very close to Dengzhao. It takes a day to reach Dengzhao by boat. King Guerrilla said cautiously one day. Baishan's eyes flashed strangely, and he continued, how many soldiers can your navy transport at one time? 10,000 people is still fine. The king of Guerrilla suddenly had a very bad premonition. Nodding lightly, Baishan said, it's too few. From now on, you guys in Korea will use all means to step up shipbuilding and prepare for the Golden Horde to send troops to the Great Yu Kingdom. The king of Koryo trembled in his heart, and he asked nervously, is Yan Khan ready to go south? The north is getting colder and colder. Many of our cattle and sheep freeze to death every year. Recuperation is a piece of shit. If we don't go south, our people will starve to death. Baishan sneered. Although his rashness led to the failure in Jizhao and the loss of Shanhaiguan, he has been pushing the Golden Horde to go south, and now the leader of the tribe on the grassland finally understands that his decision is correct and is planning a plan to go south. It's just a pity that he can no longer continue to lead the army now, and can only let other Taiji set foot on the land of the Great Yu Kingdom first. But despite this, he never let go of his hatred for Xiaoming for a day. He has been waiting for the day when he can take revenge, and now he sees hope and has a wonderful plan in his heart. Dengzhao Xiaoming really enjoyed the pure and natural hazen of this era once, and licked his lips incessantly, showing a satisfied smile. This time, he let the fisherman go out to fish for abalone, not purely for his own enjoyment. His real purpose was to find a trading point for Dengzhao. There is no doubt that these sea treasures will become another income after salt. Now the fiefs need development and money is needed everywhere. King Zhao's industry, Yao Zhao's agriculture and animal husbandry, and Dengzhao rely on the sea to eat the sea. At present, he values these three places the most after tasting the abalone. Xiaoming tasted other flavors of seafood in Dengzhao in the next few days. During the period, he did not idle, but inspected the situation of coastal defense. After he left Dengzhao last time, the soldiers of the construction battalion arrived in Dengzhao. They built hundreds of forts along the military port, and these forts will be equipped with heavy artillery, used to defend against attacks from the sea. In addition to the military port, Yang Chengai also selected some coastlines that are easy for the army to land on to build coastal defense forts. Now Dengzhao has a very important strategic position and has to focus on defense in addition to the fort. Xiaoming also inspected the situation of the salt field. Now, with the help of the construction camp, some salt fields with concrete floors have been built in the salt field. When Xiaoming arrived at the salt field, hundreds of salt fields were drying salt out of bounds. The salt workers in the salt field came and went, and some of the salt in the salt field was piled up into a salt mountain, a piece of white flowers. Seeing these salt mountains, Xiaoming laughed happily. His Royal Highness, since we use this seawater to dry salt, the salt production of our salt farm has increased more than 100 times. Now let's not talk about the salt in the fief. It is not a problem to export it now, and after our sea salt is filtered and purified, the salt of this salt the quality is more than a little bit higher than that of domestic table salt. It can be said that our table salt has completely reached the level of tribute salt. Yao Winitun said excitedly. Yang Chengai said with a smile, His Royal Highness, Yao Winitun's words are not bad. When we were representing the country, our Dengzhao salt was sent to the palace as tribute salt. Nodding with satisfaction, Xiaoming was even relieved. He said, since this is the case, the king will let the Chamber of Commerce come to Dengzhao to bring the salt back to sell. Yang Chengai and Yao Winitun were overjoyed. They were all looking forward to increasing Dengzhao's finances through this salt. After half a month of patrolling and playing in Dengzhao, Xiaoming and Fei Yuer set off for King Zhao the next day. After all, in Dengzhao, he has dealt with everything that should be dealt with. This time, he will need the Chamber of Commerce to transport salt. His ambition is very big, to occupy the market of Dayu country with the salt of Dengzhao. After 3 days, Xiaoming and Fei Yuer arrived in Qingzhao. The two had just entered Qingzhao city when Lin Wentao, who had heard the news, rushed over. Xiaoming asked Fei Yuer to go back first and asked, "What's wrong? Lin Wentao, is there something wrong with your steam engine?" Lin Wentao said with a smile, Your Highness, there is no problem with the steam engine, but in just 1 month, I converted the steam engine from the basic Newcomen steam engine to a duplex steam engine double steam engine? Xiao Ming said in surprise, but since Lin Wentao developed the Newcomen steam engine, he had a faint feeling that the double steam engine was not far away, but he did not expect this transformation would come so quickly. However, this is understandable. After all, the development of the Newcomen steam engine means that the problems of cylinders, cylinder plugs and connecting rods have been solved, and the compound steam engine is just a small transformation on the Newcomen steam engine generally speaking. In order to make the steam engine turn efficiently, the piston must be continuously reciprocated. First, let the hot steam enter the cylinder, which can push the piston upward. This is followed by the downward movement of the piston, which requires the steam entering the cylinder to rapidly condense to reduce volume and pressure. Before what improved the steam engine, the Newcomen steam engine was to inject cold water into the cylinder, but this would reduce the temperature of the cylinder itself, so that the next hot steam entering the cylinder would lose heat, and the efficiency was very low. So Watt discovered this drawback when repairing this kind of steam engine, so he thought that since the water vapor was cooled down and he did not want the cylinder to cool down, it would be fine to let the water vapor come out of the cylinder and then cool it down. After all, these are all connected, and the air pressure in the cylinder can also be reduced. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 459 Duplex Steam Engine. How did you make it? The changes in Deng Xiao made Xiao Ming very happy along the way. Now that the compound steam engine has made progress, he is overjoyed. The Industrial Revolution is just around the corner. How can he not be excited? Now he's thinking about applying steam engines to all walks of life. As the two walked to Bowen College, Lin Wentao explained, Your Highness, it's actually very simple. I connected 2 ports on the cylinder. One is the intake port at the front and the other is the exhaust port. When the piston moves to the top at the end, close the intake port and open the exhaust port. The condenser waiting for hot water vapor outside the exhaust port is the condenser. Close to vacuum, and the piston is pulled down. After a pause, he continued, then repeating the action just now can make the piston cycle back and forth. As long as the crank and connecting rod structure are connected, it can become a crankshaft movement, and I tested it. The efficiency of the compound steam engine is 5 times the Newcomen steam engine. Well, yes, Lin Wentao, this time, your School of Physics has really made a big contribution. In the future, King Zhao will undergo earth-shaking changes because of your credit. This king has to admit that the School of Chemistry has really lost to you this time. Ha ha ha. Xiao Ming laughed. Lin Wentao said at this time, however, Your Highness, the bore cutting of this cylinder is too slow, and the speed of producing a duplex steam engine is very slow. Can we use the first steam engine for the bore cutting of a lathe, so that we can make the work efficiency of the lathe has been improved many times? After all, the lathe of the Water Conservancy workshop is greatly affected by the water flow, and the efficiency is also very low. Of course, now your School of Physics doesn't need to do anything else. Now you and the Department of Equipment are working together to build a steam engine production line. Whether it's money or people, this king will sell the palace and make it up for you. Xiao Ming mouthed out the rhetoric. What he lacks most in his fifth now is population, and the development of steam engines will greatly alleviate this problem. Thank you, Your Highness. Lin Wentao was delighted to hear Xiao Ming's promise. The two went all the way to Bowen College. At this time, there were 2 steam engines in the physics laboratory of Bowen College. One steam engine was a Newcomen steam engine, and the other was a compound steam engine. Zhang Liu and other craftsmen were observing the steam engine in the laboratory. One of the 2 steam engines is moving up and down, and the other is cranking. His Royal Highness, Lin Wentao is a good boy. We just helped him produce the Newcomen steam engine, and they asked us to reassemble a steam engine. Zhang Liu said with a smile, now we are studying how to combine the boring machine and the steam engine. Xiao Ming also saw the steam engine in the laboratory at this time. Seeing these 2 real steam engines, he suddenly felt that he had come to England during the Industrial Revolution. Lin Wentao said at this time, Your Highness, this steam engine is not just my credit, but the credit of all the students in the School of Physics. We developed the compound steam engine after researching and discussing together and solving problems. It seems that everyone is making progress. Well, this is what this king wants to see. Xiao Ming said. looking around the students in the School of Physics. "It seems that this king has to award you a collective medal of honor." "Thank you, Your Highness," a group of students from the School of Physics said excitedly while everyone was laughing. Xiao Ming suddenly saw a small glass model of a steam engine placed on the podium in the middle of the laboratory. Below the model was an alcohol lamp. He walked over and said to Lin Wentao, "You asked the glass workshop to make this glass steam engine?" "Yes, Your Highness. Glass is easier to shape, so we made this model according to the appearance of a double steam engine," Lin Wentao said. "Then the equipment department restored the steam engine according to the appearance of this model. This is a good idea. The equipment developed in the future can use the method of making glass models first," Xiao Ming said, and turned to the real double steam engine in front of him. This is a double steam engine made of pure steel and copper. It has an all-metal texture that is characteristic of the Steel Age. Just by virtue of this steam engine, he already had the capital to catch up with European civilization. Now the first steam engine in Dao Kingdom was officially born in Qingzhou. The following problem is the mass production of steam engine and its application in various industries in this era. There are only two kinds of steam engine movements. One is the linear movement through the connecting rod, and the other is the rotational movement through the flywheel. In order to speed up the use of steam engines on machine tools, Xiao Ming felt that it was necessary to teach on site, so he gathered all the students and the craftsmen of the equipment department and began to talk about the movement of the connecting rod, the movement of the crankshaft, and the use of the flywheel. The connecting rod body consists of three parts. The part connected with a piston pin is called the small end of the connecting rod. The part connected with a crankshaft is called the big end of the connecting rod, and the part connecting the small head and the big head is called the connecting rod body, of which the small end of the connecting rod is called the connecting rod body. Most of them are thin-walled annular structures. In order to reduce the wear between the piston pin and the piston pin, a thin-walled bronze bushing is pressed into the small head hole. Drilling or milling grooves are made on the small head and the bushing to allow the splashing oil to enter. Lubricate the mating surfaces of the bushing and the piston pin. After a pause, Xiao Ming continued, "The connecting rod shaft is a long rod, and it is also subjected to large forces during work, so in order to prevent bending deformation, you should use I-shaped cross-sections in the production of the shaft. This is because the strength of the shape section is high enough, followed by the flywheel, which is a disc structure through which the steam engine can make the machine rotate." When Xiao Ming was talking, the picture began to appear in the minds of the students and the craftsmen. The connecting rods, crankshafts, flywheels and other structures of the steam engine flashed one by one. At the same time, the picture of the steam engine driving these components to move is also very clear. With the current industrial base of Qingzhou, the steel required by the steam engine is not a problem at all, and the quality of the connecting rod, crankshaft, and flywheel is naturally not a problem. So he only needs to tell Lin Wentao and Zhang Liu how to use these components and how to make them. They have their own way. After some explanations, everyone has a preliminary understanding of the use of steam engines. Many of them only understand that steam engines are to be developed, but many people do not understand the use of steam engines. Now they finally understand the importance of steam engines. His Royal Highness, we understand. After we go back, we will produce the flywheel, Zhang Liu said. Xiao Ming said very clearly, as long as a certain torque is applied to the flywheel through the connecting rod in the crankshaft, the flywheel will turn. Chapter 460. Another surprise. Bowen College is in a special joy with the birth of the duplex steam engine, and then Xiao Ming's collective award to the School of Physics ignited the enthusiasm of the students. The whole school was as lively as the Chinese New Year, and the matter of the compound steam engine was being discussed everywhere. Of course, Xiao Ming was the happiest in this incident. After he came out of Bowen College, he returned to the palace with a smile, because a revolution in the industrial age was about to happen in Qingzhou. What happy event makes His Highness so happy? Back at the palace, Fei Yuer asked with a smile. Although she didn't know why, she also laughed when she saw Xiao Ming so happy. Xiao Ming said, "I'm afraid the princess doesn't understand what this steam engine is. Come on, this king will tell you about this steam engine." So Xiao Ming explained what Bowen College had developed about the steam engine, and used the technology SPAR to conduct some popular science on Fei Yuer. After his detailed explanation, Fei Yuer gradually understood if it's really as His Highness said, this steam engine is simply too important for Qingzhou and even the Great Yu Kingdom. One steam engine can replace hundreds of people. This is terrible. Fei Yu exclaimed. Xiao Ming nodded, that's the truth. The population of the fief is small. Now that there is a steam engine, One person can take care of the machine and can support 100 people. Especially the textile industry is about to undergo earth-shaking changes. Fayuir became more and more interested, and she asked, Your Highness, what does this have to do with the textile industry? Because there is a type of textile machine that can only play a real role through a steam engine. Xiao Ming said after the start of the Industrial Revolution, the steam engine was first used in the textile industry, so he felt it was time to introduce the Jenny machine with the steam engine and the Jenny machine. King Zhao's textile industry will undergo earth-shaking changes driven by these two machines the men and women weaved in the Great Yu Kingdom since ancient times. Speaking of this textile, Fayuir became more and more energetic. She said, His Royal Highness has made a new type of textile machine for King Zhao. Is there any more powerful textile machine? Of course there is. This is a spinning machine that uses a shuttle. This spinning machine is also a multi-spindle spinning machine with 8 spindles. It can not only spin cotton, but also wool and linen. Xiao Ming said. Fayuir was a little surprised when she heard the words, Can you still spin wool and linen? Xiao Ming nodded. This is only the most basic. After improvements, this type of textile machine can have up to 40 spindles. Imagine a steam engine controlling a 40-spindle steam engine around the clock. How much cloth do you get? Fayuir thought for a while. With shock in her eyes, she looked at Xiao Ming and said, Your Highness, if this is the case, how will these folks sell cloth in the future? Compared with the cloth, this may cause dissatisfaction among the people. Fayuir's reminder made Xiao Ming frown. He clearly remembered that the Jenny textile machine was smashed by the citizens who lost their jobs because of terror. Because the Jenny textile machine seriously damaged the self-sufficiency economy, now Xiao Ming will also face this kind of problem. But he knows that the wheel of history cannot be stopped because of temporary incomprehension, so he said, Even so, this textile industry must change. They don't understand now, but they will soon understand. Fayuir nodded worriedly, seeing that Xiao Ming was lost in thought. Fayuir stopped talking sensible and went back to the bedroom sighing. Xiao Ming rubbed his brows. The appearance of the steam engine really made him happy, but Fayuir's inadvertent reminder really made him a little bit painful. Nowadays, the whole country of Diu is self-sufficient by small farmers. Women weave cloth and sell it, while men plow the fields and herd cattle. The emergence of the steam engine means that he can turn King Zhao into an industrial society at any time, but such a drastic change can easily cause chaos. If he really lets go, capital will surely quickly push his fief to capitalize and urbanize it. Change. He couldn't be sure what such a drastic change would cause, and he couldn't bear the confusion caused by this change. After hesitating for a long time, Xiao Ming suddenly decided not to open the steam engine to merchants for the time being. This is the safest method at present. Unlike the United Kingdom before the Industrial Revolution, the country of Great Yu is free. The land here is the lifeblood of the common people and cannot be moved for the time being. Moreover, the people's wisdom of the fief makes it impossible for the common people to understand what Industrial Revolution is. Therefore, he temporarily prepared to let the government establish a steam engine workshop to avoid such a drastic change. After the people accepted the steam engine and the factory, the people realized that they could live by working in the factory, and he gradually opened the steam engine to the businessmen, and he can keep the secret of the steam engine for a long time, so as to avoid the secret from being spied on prematurely. After he figured out this matter, Xiao Ming let out a soft sigh of relief. It is not easy to be a vassal king. He must be careful with any changes. He is still relying on the common people, and he cannot change his position and stand behind the businessman. After he gradually popularized industrial knowledge, he believed that the near-term industrial revolution could have a soft landing. He was thinking when the servant came to report and said, Song Changping from the military workshop of His Highness is here, and he said to bring a rifle to His Highness. Rifle gun? Xiao Ming was startled. He went to Deng Zhao this time, and King Zhao's technology has really exploded. Not to mention that the compound steam engine came out, but now even rifled guns have come out. On the way to the big explosion of technology led him in. Xiao Ming said excitedly, but he wanted to know how Song Changping produced rifled guns. Soon Song Changping walked in, holding a flintlock gun in his hand. When he came to Xiao Ming, he said, Your Highness, this is a new type of gun from the military workshop, a rifle gun, which is imitated and produced according to the books given by Your Highness. Xiao Ming took the flintlock gun, and he looked into the barrel. There were not spiral rifling, but sloping rifling. The density of these rifling was very high. At first glance, it looked similar to the standard spiral rifling. After looking at the rifle, Xiao Ming had already thought about it. He said, To be honest, How long did you use the hook knife to pull this flintlock gun? Song Changping was stunned for a moment, then he smiled bitterly. He said to Xiaoming, in the end, nothing can be hidden from your highness. This flintlock gun was indeed pulled with a hook knife, but it took several days for the lower official to pull a qualified one. Rifle gun, but despite this, it is very laborious to load, and can only reach 1/3 the speed of a musket. Chapter 461 Steam Engine Workshop. The cold texture of metal came from the body of the flintlock gun. Raising the flintlock gun and aiming forward, Xiaoming said, maybe you can try another kind of bullet, which will be easier to load with round projectiles. The flintlock gun has been produced and equipped for a period of time. Xiaoming has been psychologically prepared for the appearance of the rifled gun. The first rifled gun in the contemporary era was born in the early 15th century. This rifled gun is collectively called the rifle. At the beginning of the 17th century, the Danish army in Europe was the first to use rifles. However, the production of rifled guns at this time was complicated, and the loading of ammunition was very difficult, which caused the rifled guns to not exist on a large scale in the European army. Skirmish lines for the attack of the pistols existed at the same time. The difficulty of loading is part of it. Black powder, a low-intensity explosive, also makes the range of rifled guns not too outstanding. However, compared with muskets, the range of rifled guns based on black powder has increased from 90 meters to about 200 meters. This is already pretty good. Now he can't change the black powder, but for Xiaoming, he can change the bullet. After all, he is very aware of the drawbacks of rifled guns, and he knows how to restrain them. What he told Song Changping was the Miguel bullet. Is your highness talking about the cylindrical-headed bullets in the books? Song Changping said, it is precisely because the round lead bullets are difficult to load that the lower official is trying to produce such cylindrical-headed bullets. You are already making this kind of bullet? Yes, your progress is getting bigger and bigger. Xiaoming laughed. The Mignet rifle played by Miguel is a front-loading rifled rifle in the 19th century. This rifle is very powerful. The range can reach 900 meters, and the accuracy can be guaranteed within 500 meters. It's a pity that Song Changping's rifled rifle and the reproduced Minute bullets have already met the requirements of this kind of rifle, but they can't keep up with the gunpowder. After all, the gunpowder used in the Minute rifle at that time was all strong gunpowder. Therefore, according to his estimation, Song Changping's rifled gun and Minute bullets can at least reach a range of about 300 meters, and there is no problem in maintaining accuracy within 150 meters. And because this kind of bullet is slightly smaller than the rifle caliber, it also solves the situation that the bullet cannot be inserted into the barrel, or the barrel is blocked when the bullet is too large when the bullet is loaded before, because the slightly smaller Mignet can be easily pushed into the chamber with a push rod, which greatly increases the rate of fire at the same time. The minor bullet is threaded around the projectile to match the rifling. The middle of the thread is filled with animal oil, and the bottom of the bullet is made of cork. When shooting, the gunpowder gas hits the cork, and the cork suddenly swells the bullet. After being instantly impacted, the bullet is stretched, so it can rely on the bullet itself to complete the sealing of the chamber at the moment of firing, and will not leak the gunpowder gas and cause the loss of kinetic energy of the bullet, thereby greatly increasing the range of the bullet. This is also the reason why Xiaoming deduced that Song Changping's rifled gun could increase the range to 300 meters or even 400 meters after using the Mignet. It's a pity that the production of this kind of bullet is more troublesome, and soldiers can't make spare bullets anytime and anywhere on the battlefield. Song Changping said. Xiaoming said, there are advantages and disadvantages. Rifle guns have a long manufacturing cycle and temporarily produce small batches of equipment for troops. Moreover, now that Lin Wentao has made a steam engine, it may not be a problem after a while. You should focus on research when you go back now. Let's talk about how to rifling and produce cylindrical bullets. Song Changping nodded. This rifled gun was drawn manually by him using a hook knife. It was very time-consuming and laborious. Although he did not know what Xiaoming was talking about, it seemed to be a very powerful thing. Leaving the rifle behind, Song Changping told Xiaoming some skills in manufacturing rifles before returning to the military workshop. He came here mainly to seek Xiaoming's opinion on rifled guns. Now that he has Xiaoming's power support, he will let go of his hands and feet to produce new rifled guns after he returns. Watching Song Changping leave, Xiaoming smiled and looked at the first rifled gun in the Great Yu Kingdom. The thief's progress day by day made him very comforted with these technological foundations. He feels that his fief is more and more secure. But the most important thing for him now is how to apply steam engines to the production of various industries and King Zhao. Today, thinking of this, he thought about it all night. And the next day he went to the equipment department and asked both Lin Wentao and Zhang Liu to come over. Your Highness. Lin Wentao was still in an excited mood because of the advent of the steam engine, but Zhang Liu seemed much calmer. Because the equipment division was the first to follow Xiaoming and had seen too much wind and rain, Xiaoming thought about it for a long time last night and decided to let Lin Wentao and Zhang Liu set up the King's House Steam Engine Workshop, which is to mass-produce steam engines. So he said, "The reason for calling you here is very simple. Now you two are responsible for the production of steam engines. To this end, this king is going to set up a special workshop, which will be in charge of the two of you, with Lin Wentao as the workshop supervisor and Zhang Liu as the deputy workshop supervisor." Steam engine workshop? Lin Wentao was immediately excited when he heard the words. He used to be just a student, but now he wants to become a workshop supervisor. This position is directly comparable to Chen Qi and Lu Tong, and he is naturally happy. Zhang Liu is also smiling. This is a kind of promotion for both of them. What? Not happy? Xiaoming joked. Yes, how can we not? Lin Wentao and Zhang Liu laughed at the same time. Xiaoming nodded, then handed a book to Zhang Liu. This book recorded how the steam engine was integrated with other machines. In the future, Lin Wentao was responsible for production and technical improvement, while he was responsible for the use of the steam engine. Zhang Liu took the book and flipped through it, and he was deeply shocked. In his eyes, the current Xiaoming was simply omniscient and omnipotent. The personnel are set, and the rest is the question of site selection, funding and craftsmen in the workshop. In order to allow the steam engine workshop to be put into production one day earlier, he relentlessly transferred half of the craftsmen of the equipment department to Lin Wentao. The craftsman of this equipment department has always been Xiaoming's royal craftsman, and now he is reluctant to give up his love, which shows that he is determined to use the steam engine. The three agreed on this matter. Xiaoming immediately asked Chen Wenlong to select the workshop in the workshop area. At the same time, he asked Lin Wentao to send the first steam engine to the lathe workshop and the boring machine to combine it to cut the cylinder. The difficulty of steam engine production is the cutting of cylinders. Now that the first steam engine is used as a base, the efficiency will naturally increase. After setting up a steam engine workshop, Xiaoming sent the structural diagram of Jenny's textile machine to Chen Wenlong, and let the remaining craftsmen produce it this year. He wants to make King's House textile industry dominate the Great Yu country. Chapter 462. Years passed, and time seemed to go by faster. It was already February after returning from Dengzhou, and then Xiaoming was busy with the steam engine workshop and Jenny's textile machine, and before he knew it, it was March. Just when Xiaoming devoted all his energy to the development of the fief, Wang Zhuan brought unpleasant news. Guerrilla is building ships on a large scale. Xiaoming carefully reviewed the information sent by Wang Zhuan. Now Wang Zhuan does not need Xiaoming's supervision. He has already extended the tentacles of the secret guard to any place he can reach. Every day, the secret guard will process a large amount of information. After the information is analyzed, some valuable information is sent to Xiaoming. Yes, since His Royal Highness left Dengzhou, the King of Koryo ordered the construction of warships. The barbarians even supported a large number of slaves in Koryo, and it is said that Beishan also appeared in Bisha city. Wang Zhuan said. Beishan. Xiaoming's eyes narrowed. Since the last battle in Jizhou, Beishan had disappeared for a long time. Wang Zhuan brought news that Beishan had cut off 3 fingers because of the defeat and was banished from Chengdu. Unexpectedly, he will now appear in Bishaxiong. Guerrilla. His Royal Highness, the official suspects that this order is likely to be issued by Beishan. Wang Zhuan added. Why? Xiaoming asked. Wang Zhuan said solemnly, because the lower officials have received some very subtle information. The barbarians are likely to plan an all-out southward attack on the Great Yu Kingdom. Bishan must be cooperating with the barbarian southward troops and wants to lead the guerrilla soldiers directly from the sea. Attack Dengzhou and attack us from both sides. What subtle news? Xiaoming's expression suddenly became very solemn, just as he had always been uneasy in his heart. The neighbors in the north of the Great Yu Kingdom never gave up their annexation of the Great Yu Kingdom since His Royal Highness was assassinated in Chang'an last time. Xiaoguan has been monitoring Shanxi merchants, a group of mercenary merchants. Since Xiaoguan discovered that during this period, Shanxi merchants have purchased iron ore, coal, saltpeter and other war materials in various parts of the Great Yu Kingdom, and these materials were sent to the grasslands through King Liang's fief to trade with the barbarians. It's not surprising that these Shanxi merchants have been doing these things. Xiaoming frowned. Wang Zhuan said, His Royal Highness, it's just that during this period of time, The ore and other items purchased by Shaanxi merchants have suddenly increased by more than 10 times, and some Shaanxi merchants are still mapping the terrain and distribution of military towns in Deu, which is very problematic. Is there anything else? Xiao Ming's brows became tighter and tighter. He pondered for a while and said, if it is true, I am afraid that the barbarians are really planning a lot. These damn Shan merchants don't want to serve the country. Now he is still funding the enemy, His Royal Highness. This is only second, and now the most worrying thing is King Liang. Wang Zhuan sighed and said, King Liang has always regarded the second prince as his own, and now the second prince has been demoted to Bez Hao. What does Prince Liang think now? No one knows that. In the past, King Liang condoned the trade between the Shaanxi merchants and the barbarians just for profit. But he still made 3 chapters to the Shaanxi merchants, but now the Jin merchants are so blatant. Xiao Ming nodded and agreed. He said, it is inevitable for King Liang to have resentment in his heart, but it is not right or wrong to condone Shaanxi merchants to betray the country. Since he doesn't care about these Shaanxi merchants, this king will take care of them for him. These Jin merchants cannot let Jin merchants fatten the barbarians. His Royal Highness said that it's just that these Shaanxi merchants are all near King Liang's land. What should we do? Wang Zhuan asked, could it be that your highness is planning to assassinate these Shaanxi merchants? It's just that these Shaanxi merchants are all local. The rich and powerful family has raised a lot of private soldiers, but it is not so easy to deal with. No, there is no need for this king to do it himself. Don't forget that King Yong has always asked this king, and it is appropriate for him to deal with these Shaanxi merchants. King Yong always wanted to get arquebuses from King Zhao. When King Yong signed a trade agreement in Chang'an, a large part of the reason was because of the arquebus. Now if he makes this request, it should not be a big problem. It's just, Your Highness, according to the information received by the lower officials, King Yong has also taken a lot of benefits from these Shaanxi merchants. It is precisely because of this that the Juyi village where these Shaanxi merchants are located will be in a state of no concern, and let King Yong do it. I'm just afraid, King Yong is also related to these Shaanxi merchants? Xiao Ming frowned. Wang Zhuan sighed and nodded. If that's the case, this king will even ask King Yong to come to King Zhao to discuss the matter. Xiao Ming said sternly. After telling Xiao Ming some news about Dou in China, Wang Zhuan turned around and left. When Wang Zhuan left, Xiao Ming personally wrote a letter to the dispatcher to summon the post general and handed the letter to King Yong. The journey from Jizhao to King Zhao is very short, and it can be reached in 3 or 4 days. He used the pretext to ask King Yong to receive the first batch of arquebuses to King Zhao. After finishing this matter, Xiao Ming sent an order to the shipbuilding workshop in Dengzhao, asking them to step up the construction of warships, and at the same time let Yu Yun continue to recruit naval soldiers for training. Since Guerrilla was building ships, he made Bishan unhappy. When the next batch of warships were launched, he would command Bisha Chang to completely destroy Guerrilla's navy. He wanted to see whether he exploded faster or Guerrilla built faster. He had to make preparations in advance that the barbarians might go south on a large scale, but now he can psychologically accept this strong neighbor to the north, and he will not be disturbed by the invasion of the barbarians because he understands that only one of the barbarians and the Great Yu Kingdom can be the master of the land, and the war between the Great Yu Kingdom and the barbarians is unavoidable. It's just a matter of time. After the Battle of Kangzhou, Beishan went south to Jizhao. He has broken the myth that the barbarians are invincible. Even if the barbarians go south again, they will not be able to stop them, but the water will only cover them. Shaking his head, development is the last word for him. As long as his fists are hard enough, how can the barbarians be able to bear him when they go south? And Shanhaiguan is in his hands, and he can take the opportunity to stab the buttocks of the barbarians, so that they will always be afraid. Thinking of this, he sent someone to call Niu Ben and shared the news with Niu Ben. What happened to the barbarians? Niu Ben said with a calm expression, Your Highness, this King Liang is really digging his own grave. Now that Shanhaiguan is in our hands, if the barbarians go south, they can only pass through the fiefs of King Liang and King Zhao, then it will be King Liang himself who will suffer. Xiao Ming nodded. Now that the crown prince's position is stable, the king of Zhao should not have asked. This King Liang is really worrying, and if the barbarians break through the fiefs of King Liang, Chang'an will be directly exposed to the barbarians. Under the hoof, so your highness doesn't need to worry too much. Since Wang Zhuan has learned the news, the emperor may have noticed it. All we need to do is to defend the Shanhaiguan and prevent the imperial army from being attacked on both sides. Moreover, His Highness does not need to underestimate the emperor. After all, The Emperor Khanate is also through military exploits that we have the current throne. Chapter 463 Proxy War. What Du Dunyu said is reasonable. Maybe this king thinks too much. Xiaoming suddenly realized that he was taking care of himself a little too much now. This was all because of the problems brought up by the previous two wars. He always felt that every attack of the barbarians had a direct relationship with him. In fact, the most unlucky people in this barbarian southward journey were King Liang and King Zhao. Just as King Zhao and King Liang were sitting on the mountain to watch the tiger fight, he now seems to be in the position they used to be. Niu Ben continued, although His Highness is the Prince of the Great Yu Kingdom, His Highness is also the Lord of the vassal state. The two should weigh the pros and cons. After all, when we fought bloody battles, everyone was watching. Jokes. I have always been dissatisfied. For these soldiers, they only have His Royal Highness in their hearts. If they are allowed to die for King Liang and King Zhao at this time, they will not be happy hearing this. Xiaoming suddenly sighed. This is the current reality of the Great Yu Kingdom. In fact, the people of the Great Yu Kingdom have no family and country in their hearts. For them, only the clansmen and vassal kings are the objects of their allegiance. Now that there are no clansmen in his fief, they are the only ones who are loyal to him. Niu Ben reminded him now, just to tell him that he needed to give the soldiers a reason to fight, otherwise the morale of the soldiers would be very poor. This king understands, Xiaoming said. He is now eating radishes and worrying less. The emperor is not in a hurry for eunuchs, and Xiao Wangsun is so calm. What does he worry about? While the two were talking, suddenly the servant said outside the main hall, Your Highness, is a general who calls himself Luo Hong asking for an interview. Luo Hong? Isn't this Luo Xin's brother? Xiaoming asked in surprise. Niu Ben also showed a puzzled look. He said, Why did Luo Hong come to King Zhao? There must be a reason. Xiaoming nodded and said, In that case, let him in. The servant turned and left, and after a while, Luo Hong in uniform appeared in the main hall. Luo Hong sees His Highness, sees Governor Nilban. When he arrived in the main hall, seeing Xiaoming and Niu Ben both present, Luo Hong bowed and saluted. Xiaoming said, General Luo excuses the ceremony, please take a seat. You don't have to be polite. This king and Lingzhen have a good relationship, so there is no need for these virtual ceremony. His Royal Highness, if you come to King Zhao to play, you will naturally not be so polite to His Royal Highness, but this time I came to King Zhao by the Emperor's order. Oh. Is it King Zhao where your father asked you to come? Xiaoming wondered exactly. Luo Hong nodded, then took out a letter from his arms and handed it to Xiaoming. His Royal Highness, please read it. After taking the letter, Xiaoming looked at it. In the letter, Xiao Wangsun mentioned that there are many signs that are different from the past in the grasslands recently. One is that the barbarians have tightened the sale of war horses, and the other is the trading volume of iron ore and saltpeter by the barbarians in the border trade. The third is that the barbarian tribes cruising in the grasslands all sent their flagheads to Chengdu. Regarding these unusual events, Xiao Wangsun deduced that the barbarians may be fighting fiercely, preparing to sack the Great Yu Kingdom again and make the Great Yu Kingdom submit to the barbarians. However, in the letter, Xiao Wangsun did not show any worries in the past, but seemed to be ambitious. He only talked about the purchase of 500 artillery pieces and 15,000 arquebuses from King Zhao. All these things were entrusted to Luo Hong. Because Luo Hong is now the main general of the firearms battalion, he also ordered Xiaoming to be responsible for letting Luo Hong participate in the training of the King Zhao army, and making Luo Hong a general who commands the firearms troop just like Luo Xin. 500 artillery pieces, 15,000 arquebuses, big business. Xiaoming grinned. Luo Hong seemed to already know the content of the letter. He said to Niu Ben, Captain Niu, I will rely on the governor from now on. Niu Ben was baffled by Luo Hong's actions, and looked at Xiaoming strangely. Helplessly smiled. Xiaoming gave the letter to Niu Ben. After reading it, he suddenly realized that Xiao Wangsun was really good at this time. Not only did he purchase firearms, he also asked Xiaoming to help him train the generals of the firearms battalion this time. Besides Luo Hong, 30 other generals from the firearms battalion arrived in King Zhao. Xiao Wangsun naturally thought about letting Luo Hong go out. One is because Luo Hong and King Zhao army used to fight side by side, and they were familiar with each other. Luo Xin was in King Zhao army when he came here. This is also a relationship since this is the request of the royal father. This king can only obey. Governor Niu, this matter is left to you. Xiaoming winked at Niu Ben as he spoke. Niu Ben understood and said, Yes, Your Highness. After deciding on this matter, Luo Hong continued, Your Highness, the change of the barbarians made King Liang and King Zhao also worried. It is said that he sent officials to King Zhao to buy firearms to defend against the barbarians. It seems that His Royal Highness will make another profit this time. It's full, really? I haven't heard of this, but if there is such a thing, I'm very happy. Xiao Ming said with a smile. The two chatted and laughed with Luo Hong for a while before Niu Ben left with Luo Hong. After sending the two away, Xiao Ming's brows furrowed. This time, Xiao Wangxun's actions made him suddenly have a sense of enlightenment. As Niu Ben said, he did not have to participate in the war himself, but wanted to use the war to make a fortune, and training generals for Xiao Wangxun means that he is engaged in a proxy war. As the name suggests, he does not directly participate in the war, but sells weapons to the court, King Liang, and King Zhao to let them fight for himself. In this way, he can not only stay in the rear, but also make a fortune by selling war materials, while the imperial court and King Zhao and King Liang need to pay only money. After he figured this out, Xiao Ming smiled lightly. In this way, he could not only consume the living power of the barbarians on a large scale, but also make money. Why not do it? Just as Luo Hong said, only 4 days later, the procurement officials sent by King Zhao and King Liang appeared in King Zhao, and asked Xiao Ming to buy artillery and arquebus respectively. This time, King Zhao did not send Zhao Yuanliang over, but sent an unfamiliar official over, and he probably understood the conflict between Zhao Yuanliang and him. The same is true of King Liang, who is also a trusted official among them. King Zhao proposed to buy 600 cannons and 7,000 arquebuses this time, while King Liang proposed to buy 400 cannons and 6,000 arquebuses. In addition to the orders from the imperial court, the military workshop now has a business of 1,500 artillery pieces and 28,000 arquebuses. His Royal Highness, now the fief's finances are relatively comfortable. Pang Yukin was so happy when he learned of this that his teeth were out of sight. The huge arms orders brought huge wealth to King Zhao, and Xiao Ming, who was at a loss for money, suddenly became rich with this money. The industrialization process of King Zhao will develop more steadily. Xiao Ming has no choice but to sigh that he still sells arms to make money. Chapter 464 Government Affairs Reform. The atmosphere in the King Zhao government office was somewhat relaxed and happy at this time. The 3 consecutive arms orders made the government officials headed by Pang Yukin relieved. Now the tight financial situation of the fiefs has finally been eased because of these orders. With 1,500 artillery pieces and 28,000 arquebuses, these arms purchases are enough to bring more than 10 million taels of silver to the fief. Don't be too happy now, these materials have not yet arrived in our hands. Next, you have to hand over the materials with the court, King Zhao, and King Liang. Xiao Ming reminded, just like the last time I did business with the king of Chu, silver, gold, and copper were only part of the transaction, and most of the silver was offset by materials in the Great Yu Kingdom. King Zhao had the most war horses. After negotiation, King Zhao took out 100,000 taels of gold, 1 million taels of silver, 120,000 caddies of brass, 92,000 caddies of iron, and 1 million taels of wheat, 5,000 caddies of silk, 50,000 pieces of cloth, 300,000 pieces of banknotes, and 20,000 horses. And King Liang's land was rich in open-pit coal mines, so he took out 50,000 taels of gold, 900,000 taels of silver, 62,000 jin of brass, 108,000 jin of iron, 1,200,000 stone of wheat, and 1 million jin of coal. 600,000 banknotes. Compared with King Zhao and King Liang, the court's materials were the most diverse, including 200,000 caddies of saltpeter and 160,000 caddies of sulfur. The amount of these materials looks scary, but in fact, it is not much at all. For example, King Liang's 1 million caddies of coal are actually only 500 tons of coal, and 62,000 caddies of brass is only 31 tons. One of his cast iron artillery can be at least 500 caddies, and the heavy city defense artillery is even more than 1,000 caddies. Yes, Your Highness, I will let the treasuries in King Zhao prepare to receive these materials. Pang Yukin said. Compared with silver, Pang Yukin prefers specific grains, iron, copper and other hard currencies. After all, there is a war, and money may not be able to buy these things, and even if they are all silver, they still have to exchange them with the merchants for these materials, so it is convenient and fast to barter directly. The only idea is that the quality of the materials needs to be controlled. Xiao Ming nodded, and he continued, in the future, our arms trade will only increase, and King Zhao's treasury may not be enough, and the way of stacking everything in the past needs to be changed. There must be a special warehouse for materials. In the past, Pang Yukin didn't feel anything, but now with more and more transactions day by day, The warehouse of this government office is indeed gradually running out of use, he said. His Royal Highness said very much, but when he said this, the official remembered something. The Xiaoguanli read His Royal Highness's government affairs books at Bowen College, and gained quite a lot. Xiaoguan thought that it was time to rectify the government affairs in the fiefdom. After all, there are more and more affairs in the fiefdom, and government affairs should be refined, at least to imitate the imperial court. Its own system of officials. Official system? Xiao Ming showed a playful look. It seems that Peng Yu can really learn some advanced government experience from Bowen College. A look of embarrassment appeared on Peng Yukin's dull face. Originally, he was not very sad about these government affairs books, but after reading them by accident, he suddenly felt that many things in the books were very useful, so he re-examined the government affairs books that Xiao Ming put in Bowen College. Yes, Your Highness, the lower officials thought that it was time to rectify the government offices, so that the government offices of the fiefdoms and counties could complete the various policies of His Highness from top to bottom, and handle different affairs of the people at the same time. Peng Yukin said firmly, well, you're right. During this time, this king has been busy with Dengzhao affairs, but he has neglected this matter. Since this is the case, he will put this matter on the agenda. Xiao Ming said, generally speaking, his fief is a vassal state. Since it is a vassal state, it must have its own complete system of officials, so that he can manage the fiefdom more effectively. Secondly, the establishment of a complete official system is also to control the newly acquired territory at any time, such as the current Ryukyu Island. In the future, Xiao Ming will have more and more colonies, which requires the ability to establish government offices in unfamiliar places at any time. So a mature official system is particularly important at this time, because this is not only to manage the fiefs at this stage, but the most important thing is to be able to reserve officials for emergencies after the matter was settled. Peng Yukin ordered to summon the chief officials of the fiefs and counties to come to the Qingzhou government to discuss the matter. At the same time, he and Xiao Ming worked out the specific organization and scope of responsibility within a few days. 5 days later, all the state and county officials went to Qingzhou to participate in the discussion in the Qingzhou government office. Xiao Ming was in the main position, and all the officials were arranged under Xiao Ming, and the situation was like a court discussion. Peng Yukin stood at the front as the head of the fiefs, followed by Zun Xingcheng, the prefect of Qingzhou, Yang Chengai, the prefect of Dengzhou, Cheng Yuchen, the prefect of Kangzhou, Yan Changhao, the prefect of Yizhao, Kong Yonggan, the prefect of Yunzhao, Wei Changming, the prefect of Leizhao, and Yao Yao. State Inspector Hanjin. After the prefects of each state, they are the magistrates in charge of the counties. There are hundreds of people in all. Some of these officials were elected by Peng Yukin, some were promoted from former fiefs, and some were allocated by Bowen College. Looking at the officials below, Xiao Ming suddenly smiled. At this moment, he suddenly understood Xiao Wangxun's obsession with imperial power. Just imagine, with so many officials standing in front of him, who would have a feeling of looking down on the world. Everyone who came to Qingzhou to discuss matters must have known about the government reform. Nowadays, the affairs of fiefdoms are becoming more and more numerous and changing with each passing day. The prefectures and county governments must make changes in advance for future development. At the same time, this discussion is also to make you clarify the official system of the fiefs, who will handle the problems in government affairs in the future, so as to avoid a situation of prevarication. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Xiao Ming said aloud at this time, "Yes, Your Highness." The officials immediately bowed and said at this time. Xiao Ming continued, "Since this is the case, this king will inform you about the government affairs and official system of the fief. From today, this king will order Peng Yukin to be the first assistant of the Fenguo cabinet and set up the Fenguo cabinet. It is composed of 9 cabinet ministers, who are responsible for adjudicating the government affairs of various states and counties and discussing government affairs with the king. There are 6 divisions under the cabinet, whose duties are the same as those of the 6 divisions. In addition, the supervisory yuan is established independently of the 6 divisions, and is in charge of the judicial and criminal law of the country, to monitor the fiefdom officials." Recalling the design of the official system, Xiao Ming stated his thoughts one by one. From then on, his feudal country will get rid of the chaotic government affairs management system and have a comprehensive management system of a small imperial court. Chapter 465. Establish the Department of Foreign Affairs, and the Department of Foreign Affairs will be responsible for handling the relations between Fenguo and countries other than the Great Yu Kingdom. In addition, the prefectures and yamen will separate the arrests and the prefectures and counties will set up the supervisors of the guard stations to cooperate with the supervision yuan in the enforcement of the law, at the same time responsible for arresting prisoners and handling civil disputes. While Xiao Ming was talking, Pang Yukan distributed the printed officials and government affairs system to the officials. Other vassal kings have their own official system, but King Zhao and other 6 prefectures have not had such a regular official and government system because of the war and the lack of personnel. However, although Xiao Ming has now officially established his own management system, at this time the system is still very different from the official system of the Great Yu Kingdom. Many officials were already at a loss when they listened to it, so when they got the booklet, they immediately read it carefully, and they basically understood the new government system by comparing what Xiao Ming said in general. Since then, the things that officials are responsible for have been refined, and there are fewer things they need to manage, which is a good thing for them. Of course, there are also bad things, that is, from now on, their rights will be dispersed, and there is no way to grab them. After talking for half an hour, Xiao Ming finally made it clear about the government affairs and the official system. Then he looked at the officials. Do you have any questions? Zhan Xingcheng asked, puzzled at this time. His Royal Highness, since there are 9 ministers in the cabinet, who are the remaining 8 people besides Pang Xiaofu? Speaking of this, Xiao Ming and Pang Yukan looked at each other and smiled. Pang Yukan said, the remaining 8 people are not available yet, but His Highness is looking for candidates. You all have a chance. When everyone heard the words, there was a commotion and whispered. Yang Chengai asked, Your Highness, since the 6th division has been established, what role does this cabinet have? The 6th Council of Government Affairs will first be reviewed by the cabinet, and the ministers of the cabinet will reach a consensus before they can issue a decision and send it to the king for approval. It can be said that the cabinet is directly responsible to the king. Xiao Ming said loudly. The establishment of the cabinet was not made by Xiao Ming on a whim, but because the government affairs system of the Great Yu Kingdom was too backward, and was gradually unable to apply to today's world development. That's why he moved the cabinet system to his own fief. In his opinion, the Ming dynasty's cabinet system was very close to a constitutional monarchy, but unlike a constitutional monarchy, the cabinet system maintains Xiao Ming's absolute power. At the same time, Xiao Ming is from modern times, and he will not reuse eunuchs at all, nor will he let eunuchs dictatorship, and he will not panic. Therefore, the cabinet system in his hands will be very suitable for the management of feudal countries, and it will also avoid the emergence of powers and ministers with dictatorship happening. After all, there are 9 people in the cabinet. Even if he does not ask about government affairs, the decree can only be implemented if 2/3 of the people pass it. Although Pang Yukan is the chief assistant of the cabinet, it does not mean that he has the greatest power, but that he is responsible for the operation of the cabinet. Yang Chengai nodded when he heard the words, and now he understands. Now it is like dividing the rights of Pang Yukan to 9 people. Other officials also have their own thoughts, so doesn't this mean that they will become the 3rd batch of officials? After all, there are 6 divisions under the cabinet ministers, and they are under the 6 divisions. Cheng Yuchen said, It's just that, Your Highness, there are so many official positions, and Fang Guo doesn't have so many officials to fill up. Xiao Ming and Pang Yukan had long been concerned about this issue, and he said, This king and Pang Xiaofu have discussed. Bowen College has trained officials for so long, and now it is time for these students to pass the exam and enter the officialdom. Of course, you can all take the exam. You all have administrative experience, and this king will give you extra consideration. As soon as Xiao Ming's voice fell, the officials immediately showed excited expressions. Xiao Ming said this means that they also have the opportunity to enter the cabinet and the 6th division. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Zhan Xingcheng and other 7 governors couldn't help but be very ambitious at this time. They were already in high positions. Now that Xiao Ming has re-established an administrative system, they naturally want to do more. Moreover, as Xiao Ming said, they have experience in handling government affairs and are more suitable to serve as chief officials in the current cabinet and 6 divisions. They don't want to lose out to the guys at Bowen College. His Royal Highness, the officials said excitedly. They were looking forward to the coming of the exam. After all, they were all exam masters, and although they were not at Bowen College, they all had government books given by Xiao Ming. In addition to the cabinet and the 6th division, the major changes in government affairs this time are the control yuan. Because this was the beginning of Xiao Ming's independence of the judiciary, officials in the fiefs would be supervised by the officials of the Overwatch Council, from the doctors down to the people, to rule the country according to the law. However, like the cabinet, this organization is only a prototype at present, and there is no specific organization and personnel. which also needs Xiao Ming to fill. The discussion started at noon and lasted until the afternoon. Some institutions had no staff for the time being and could only wait to make up after the exam, while some institutions could be divided directly, such as the guard station planned by Xiao Ming. Now the guard station will be directly spun off from the government office, and will be governed by the guard department. Regardless of this matter and the magistrates of each county, the focus will be on the construction of people's livelihoods. Since this government reform involves a lot and almost overturned the old system, Xiao Ming and Pang Yukin gave detailed answers to the questions raised by officials. In the evening, Xiao Ming set up a banquet for the officials to have a meal together. This time, the officials were not in the mood to eat, and they were all thinking about the impact of this political change on themselves. However, this meeting only put forward a reform program. As for the specific reform measures, it needs to be realized step by step. Xiao Ming is like giving these officials a preventive shot in advance, so that they can be psychologically prepared. After the banquet in the palace was over, officials from various states and counties thanked them and left, and they went back to carefully evaluate the matter. Your Highness, what happened? So many officials gathered and King Zhao Fei Yu'er came out of the bedroom after the officials left. Xiao Ming felt relieved after he was busy with today's affairs, so he told Fei Yu'er about the government reform, the cabinet, the Overwatch Council, the Department of Guards. His Highness's reforms are really ingenious. Fei Yu said with a smile, it's just that His Highness's fiefs will need a large number of officials to replenish. Xiao Ming nodded and said, that's right, now this king is worrying about this matter. There are so many official gaps all at once, and this time it's going to be a headache. Just as he was talking, Xiao Ming suddenly remembered something, and he said to Fei Yu'er, the Fei family's scholarly family, the fourth and third princes, may be able to help this king solve his urgent needs. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 466, The Problem of Medical School. The evening breeze was blowing, and the temperature gradually warmed up in March. Xiao Ming and Fei Yu'er both took off their padded jackets. The spring flowers in the palace have already bloomed, and the green willows in front of the pond have spit out tender shoots. His Royal Highness, this administrative reform is such an important matter that the minister and concubine dare not talk about it. Fei Yu'er said suddenly. Nervously, Xiao Ming was stunned when he heard the words, and he said, don't you want the Fei family to be involved in King Zhao's government affairs? Exactly, the concubines don't want the Fei family to be involved in government affairs. Once the people of the Fei family enter the King Zhao officialdom, the concubines will not be able to protect themselves. Even if the concubines don't speak, they will be regarded as the concubine. Fei Yu said with a frown. Xiao Ming looked at Fei Yu'er, and he had to say that Fei Yu'er was a very smart woman. If it was a normal woman in the Great Yu Kingdom, she would like to put her family in King Zhao's government system now, but Fei Yu'er was afraid to avoid it. Less than after a slight smile, Xiao Ming said, Princess, don't need to be nervous, you don't shy away from relatives. Besides, Fei's disciples are all over the world. Even if they are not from the Fei's family, they might be able to recommend some wise men. Hearing this, Fei Yu'er breathed a sigh of relief, and she said, if your highness says so, my father can recommend a few officials who are very talented, but unsatisfactory. Since that's the case, why don't the princess send a letter now and ask Fei's Hongshu to introduce him to the king? Xiao Ming said. Fei Yu'er hesitated for a while, finally nodded, and turned back to the bedroom shaking his head. Xiao Ming is really helpless to do this. In fact, his purpose is to diversify the officials in the officialdom and avoid the formation of cronies. During this discussion, he suddenly realized that there seems to be a gap between the officials recommended by Pang Yukin and the local officials in King Zhao at the banquet. There was also a wave of Chang Yuchen, Zhan Xingcheng and others, Yang Chengai, Kong Yonggan and others. This sign aroused Xiao Ming's vigilance. After having the technology spar, he is familiar with history. Even under the rule of Mingjin, there will be conflicts between ministers, and officials have their own dark laws. Naturally, there are officials who come out of the mud, but most ministers eventually become old fritters in the officialdom. He believes in Pang Yukin's character, but some things are beyond his control. As the saying goes, tigers are easy to fight and flies are hard to tangle, so it was a good choice for him to bring in the Fei family to balance the composition of the officialdom. In this way, The formation of an official atmosphere of mutual supervision is also conducive to keeping the officialdom clear. After the government affairs reform was set, the government affairs selection examination was introduced. The news quickly spread in Bowen College, and the School of Government Affairs, which has always been the largest number of people, suddenly exploded, and each student was eagerly waiting for the day when the government opened the department to select scholars. It's been 2 years. We've been studying hard at Bowen College for 2 years. And now we've finally arrived at this day. A student roared in the sky. Thanks to His Highness and Pang Changshi, we are finally able to apply what we have learned to people's livelihood. I didn't expect that students who study the law can have today. I didn't expect that His Highness actually set up the Overwatch Council, which is beyond expectations. After the time of the exam was announced, the students of the School of Political Affairs discussed one by one as if they were fighting chicken blood, and more students were preparing for the exam without leaving their books while they were discussing the exam. Xiaoming and Pang Yukin came to Bowen College. It is here that Xiaoming will take the exam this time. His Royal Highness, look at these students. They are probably overjoyed now. They have been trained for thousands of days and used for a while, and now they finally have a place to use them. Pang Yukin said with a smile. Xiaoming looked at the students who were shaking their heads with the books and said with a smile, this time, we can test the learning situation of these students, not just for the selection of officials, but also for some students who eat and drink, deal with what should be dealt with. This king does not support idlers. Pang Yukin nodded. His Royal Highness said that Bowen College is so well paid that these students can't justify it if they don't study hard. After a pause, Pang Yukin continued, however, Your Highness, now that the establishment of the public schools in the prefectures and counties is almost complete, should we select some students to preach and teach in this public school? Generally speaking, the literacy rate of Xiaoming's fief is still very low, and the people are basically illiterate, which is very detrimental to the future development of the fief, because only by popularizing education and passing the national examination can we prevent the emergence of new clan nobility. In order to weaken the clan nobility's control over the government, Li Shimin adopted the method of the imperial examination, and he is ready to continue to deepen the imperial examination. But his imperial examination can be, it is not a test of these rigid things, but a kind of knowledge competition to compete for employment. The arrival of the two attracted the attention of the students. Some of the students who were reading louder. Although they were looking at the book, they kept looking at the two from the corner of their eyes, hoping to attract their attention. Hey, these students of the School of Political Affairs are finally arrogant, and now they have a better chance of entering the officialdom. No, they used to be acidizing colleges and physics colleges in addition to studying. Hey, when will it be our medical school's turn to look good? Medical Officer Sun takes care of his own disciples first in everything. He only teaches us some superficial knowledge, looks good, and dreams. While the two of them were patrolling the academy, some students' voices came from the corner. Hearing this, Pang Yukin said, the medical school is now managed by Dr. Sun. The medical school has been quiet during this time, and it is indeed behind other colleges. You're right, there is still a problem with Dr. Sun's thinking. Originally, this king thought that Dr. Sun was concentrating on learning medical skills, but I didn't expect that he was still conservative and did not hand over the real medical skills to the students. It is no wonder that these students are not motivated. Yes. Xiaoming was a little displeased. Pang Yukin said, these medical officers are all bad-tempered, arrogant and conceited. I don't think it's enough to take care of this medical officer Sun. Not only do I have to clean him up, this king will also introduce a new medical officer. This medical officer is also an officer. Just like the officials, whoever can go up, whoever can't go down. Don't occupy the pit and not shit. Xiaoming snorted coldly one sound. Pang Yukin suddenly laughed when he heard the words, Your Highness's sentence is a good metaphor. Just as being an official does not make decisions for the people, it is better to go home and sell red beans. Xiaoming gave a wry smile and said, it's better to hit the sun if you choose a day. Today we will go to meet Dr. Sun and ask him if he wants to stay at Bowen College. Chapter 467 The Chief Aristocrat. Medical School. Dr. Sun is reading a medical book in his medical hall. This medical book was written by Xiaoming, and there are many amazing medical skills in it. In the past 2 years, he has gained a lot from these medical skills, and the diseases that he could not understand before have also been solved. In particular, the two medical books Compendium of Materia Medica and Jin Jin Fang made him regarded as a medical book. In addition, he also read the book The Plague, which has unique insights into the plagues in the world, and at the same time he also learned some ways to defend against the plagues. He asked King Ki several times about the source of these medical books and wanted to visit the authors of the medical books, but he got the result that the authors of these medical books are not on this world. Although he had doubts in his heart, he did not dare to ask more questions, so as not to make King Ki unhappy. When they were amazed by the calligraphy and medicine, two people walked in from outside the medical hall. When Dr. Sun saw the person coming, he immediately got up and greeted him. "Your Highness." Peng Xiaofu medical officer Sun said respectfully that the students of the School of Political Affairs had already heard about the reform of King Zhao's government affairs. At this time, he naturally knew that the former Pang Changshi had now become Peng Xiaofu. Xiaoming glanced at the post house. This is a 3-room building, which is equivalent to the school's infirmary. Students usually come here when they are sick. Dr. Sun sits in the medical hall when he is free. Seeing Xiaoming and Pang Yukin's faces were not very happy, Dr. Sun felt a little uneasy in his heart, and he said carefully, "Your Highness, Peng Xiaofu's coming to the medical school really made the medical school flourish." Peng Dishenghu? Xiaoming snorted softly. Can this medical school be Peng Dishenghu instead of this king? But Sun medical officer has self-knowledge and understands that this medical school is only Peng Di. Now Xiaoming's words were not polite, and Dr. Sun's face suddenly showed a look of fear. He said nervously, "Your Highness, I don't know what the lower official did to make His Highness so angry." "What did you do wrong? Don't you have any concerns now? What did you say when the king asked you to take charge of the medical school? Now there are no less than 200 students in the medical school, and several of these 200 people can be independent. Practice medicine?" Xiaoming asked. Medical officer Sun immediately understood. He said, "His Royal Highness, since ancient times, the sages have been recruiting disciples to teach the Dao, not mentoring, not teaching. This is the tradition of all dynasties, and now Xiaoguan teaches the medical skills of the students in the medical school has been its breaking the rules of physicians. These days I've been abused by other physicians pointing at the spine, and I hope your Highness will see it clearly. Who is so arrogant?" Pang Yukin couldn't help frowning. Now that he is the first assistant of Fangul, he naturally stands from the same angle as Xiaoming. The number of these folk doctors is too small, and many people need to travel long distances to get to King Zhao to see a doctor. Now this medical school is set up just to make it easy for the people of the closed country to see a doctor. Now that someone stops it, how can he not be angry? Medical officer Sun said. Pang Xiaofu, the doctors in the world can trace their roots to only a few masters and ancestors. Now that the lower officials have broken the rules, they are naturally spurned by all the doctors. Frowning his brows, Xiaoming said, "What's the point of being spurned by others? Don't you know that this medical school is here to cure diseases and save people? Are the doctors benevolent off arts? A person with a heart, if the inheritance is broken, it is false, and it is true that they are worried about being robbed of their jobs by others." This. Dr. Sun was suddenly dumbfounded. Xiaoming's words made him unable to argue for a while, and he had to admit that Xiaoming came to the point. Physicians in the Great Yu Kingdom are a lucrative business, and now Xiaoming's chaos has long made the domestic doctors dissatisfied, and there are also arguments behind him. Just because of Xiaoming's stable position and deep popular support, no one dared to say anything more. Even Xiaoming, a noble family in Fangguo, dared to kill him, not to mention those who practice medicine. With a sneer, Xiaoming said, "Is this the king who said it right? Others are not asked by this king. This king only asks if the Sun Medical Center can let go of the door and teach the students what he has learned in his life." Dr. Sun's forehead was sweating coldly, as if Xiaoming held a sword against his chest, but after thinking about it, he shouldn't say yes or no. Seeing that medical officer Sun was still hesitating, Xiaoming stretched out his hand to put away 3 medical books on the table, and he said, "Since medical officer Sun values the rules so much, this king will take this medical book back." "Medical book? When will medical officer Sun figure out this king before returning it to you? If you can't figure it out, the chief officer of this medical school should be replaced." At the end of the sentence, Xiaoming's tone became more serious. Dr. Sun's face became paler and paler. Xiaoming was forcing him to draw a line with other doctors. After hesitating for a while, he said, "Please allow your highness to think about it for a few more days." Xiaoming nodded and motioned for Pang Yukin to leave with him. When the two arrived outside the door, Pang Yukin asked, "Your highness, Dr. Sun may not be able to easily cross this hurdle. After all, medical skills have always been passed down from father to son, master to apprentice, and there are strict requirements on the number of disciples. If you can't cross this hurdle, this king will find someone who can pass this hurdle. Under the heavy reward, there must be a brave man." This king does not believe that this folk dogma cannot be broken. Xiao Ming was a little angry. He has no objection to respecting teachers and respecting Taoism, but to this kind of small circle that is maintained by the relationship between master and apprentice. The poison of this kind of thinking: I would rather bring the craft into the lowest than easily impart it to others. Now Xiao Ming wants to break this old thinking, so that everyone who wants to learn the craft can easily access this knowledge, otherwise his school will lose its meaning. Hearing this, Pang Yukin showed a wry smile, and he said, "Your Highness, this doctor is second. Does your Highness know about the Confucius family in Guifu?" "The Confucius family in Guifu? You mean Guifu and Yunzhao?" Xiao Ming asked precisely. The Confucian family has settled in Guifu for all dynasties. And it is Confucian orthodoxy. Each generation of the head of the family will be named Duke Yanchen, and the current head of the Confucian family, Kong Hongming, is still the same. Pang Yukin said, "If you talk about the nobility, this Confucian family is the first noble of the great Yu kingdom." Xiao Ming glanced at Pang Yukin suspiciously. At this time, Pang Yukin mentioned that the Kong family in Guifu must have done it on purpose, and until now he did not know what academic Pang Yukin followed. And the first noble of the great Yu kingdom, no wonder the scholars from Qingzhou are so obsessed with Confucian orthodoxy. But when Pang Xiaofu talks about this, does it mean that this king is going to visit the Confucius family and seek help from the Confucian family? Chapter 468 Pang Yukin and number 039, S true face. His Royal Highness misunderstood. This is not what the lower official meant. The two walked through the corridor of Bowen College. Pang Yukin showed a contemplative look, but he hesitated. Seeing this, Xiao Ming said, "If you have anything to say, just say it directly. When did you become such a mother-in-law and mother? You don't have the refreshment you used to be when you were a speaker." Pang Yukin gave a wry smile and said, "Your Highness, this matter involves the Kong family, and the lower officials dare not say anything lightly. After all, the lower officials follow the teachings of legalism, and if they say it, they will inevitably be suspected of being against Confucianism." Xiao Ming has never asked Pang Yukin about the academics he respects. Now that Pang Yukin mentions it, he is a little surprised. "No wonder you are not used in the court. I am afraid this is one of the reasons exactly. Legalism is harsh, and it is easy to break when it is just right. This is the inadequacy of the lower officials." Pang Yukin said. Xiao Ming smiled, but he suddenly remembered something. He said, "No, since you respect the legal school, how can you participate in the imperial examination?" Hearing this, Pang Yukin gave a wry smile. Speaking of which, Xiaoguan is extremely ashamed. In order to enter the court, Xiaoguan had to compromise and study poetry and books, but what he really liked in his heart was legalism, because in Xiaoguan's opinion, today's in this troubled world, only the legalists can rejuvenate the country. So it is. Xiao Ming comes from modern times. He treats legalism and Confucianism equally, but he does not have any extreme opinions, because he follows pragmatism. It is mainly beneficial to development and can be used, but if this kind of academics affects development, then he has to pay attention to it. The topic was a bit crooked here. Xiao Ming continued to ask, "Then why did Pang Xiaofu mention the Confucius family in Guifu? It is said that this political reform has disturbed the Kong family in Guifu, and His Highness seems to have been criticized for his many actions in Fengguo. When I saw the medical school today, I suddenly thought of it and said it casually. HMPH, this king doesn't rely on scholar bureaucrats to rule the fiefs, so what if his Confucius family says some gossip?" Xiao Ming said lightly, but Wang Zhuan sent him some news related to the Confucius family in Guifu. Just like what Pang Yukin said, he was criticized a lot in Guifu, where the Confucius family was located. In particular, he paid attention to business, and put his strange skills before the 4 books and 5 classics, which violated the tenets of Confucianism. However, in his opinion, what these Confucian disciples are most dissatisfied with is that he has never visited the Confucian family in Guifu since his vassal Kings Hao and Xiao Wangxuan even came to Guifu to worship the temple when he ascended the throne, which just showed the high status of the Confucian family in Guifu in the hearts of scholars all over the world. An emperor is still like this. He, a vassal king of the state, does not pay attention to the Kong family, does not visit the Kong family, and does not employ a group of officials under the Kong family. Xiao Ming's behavior really makes the Kong family unhappy. Pang Yukin said carefully, "His Royal Highness said very much, but this political reform, there is such a vacancy for officials, judging from the news received by the lower officials. The Kong family seems to be very tempted, and the children of the Kong family are also eager to try." "You mean they are going to have an official with this king?" Xiao Ming asked. "It should be, but I'm afraid it's more than that." "Oh?" Xiao Ming frowned. In fact, he has been avoiding conflicts with the Confucian family in Guifu, because now his foundation is still a little weak, and Confucianism is still orthodox in Dao. Although he really wants to break the hat on his head, he will not dare to act rashly. After all, in the Great Yu Kingdom, the 3 religions and 9 streams are the cornerstones of society. These 3 religions are divided into Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. Now this Confucianism is not just a thought, but an official-based belief. The people and officials of the Great Yu Kingdom are all followers of Confucianism. To put it more seriously, this is the state religion of the past dynasties. It is the so-called Confucianism as a doctrine, Confucianism as a class, and Confucianism as a belief. The 3 complement each other and influence each other this era. It is precisely because of this that the dynasties have changed, and the Confucius family in Guifu has never encountered war like a holy place, and has been enshrined by the courts of all dynasties since becoming the first person under Xiao Ming. Pang Yuqian has also been heartbroken, but he is a little selfish about this matter, that is, he is selling legalist ideas to Xiao Ming. In his opinion, the current Confucianism can no longer lead the Great Yu Kingdom to revival. Legalism should be promoted. Originally, it was because he was worried that Xiao Ming, like others, regarded Confucianism as the state religion, but during the political reform, Xiao Ming, independent of the Overwatch Council and clarified the status of the judiciary, he felt Xiao Ming, it seems that he has his own unique idea, so he finally mustered the courage to mention it, and now Xiao Ming's tone made him even more convinced that Xiao Ming was a different vassal king. His Royal Highness, they are probably asking His Highness to follow Confucianism and ask His Highness to withdraw some decrees that do not conform to Confucianism. In the view of the lower official, Confucianism has its merits and its inadmissibility. The responsibilities of one's personal life, the pursuit of the past, the pursuit of death in the evening. The inadmissibility is that it is too pedantic, suppresses people's hearts, and suppresses thoughts, and the officials dared to propose the establishment of a law school in Bowen College to reproduce the state of contention of 100 schools of thought, Pang Yuqian said. Although Pang Yuqian didn't say it clearly, the meaning of the words was very clear, that is to make Xiao Ming pay attention to other theories to counter the influence of Confucianism in the officialdom. And now Xiao Ming finally understands the reason why Pang Yuqian did not try his best to prevent his unusually bold decree, but instead helped him to implement it. It turned out that this Pang Yuqian was just a legalist believer hiding under the Confucian facade. He understood that Pang Yuqian's proposal to establish a law school at this time was also a foreboding of the crisis, but his words were in line with Xiao Ming's ideas, so he said, Pang Xiaofu is right, only 100 schools of thought can tend to show the strength and difference of King Zhao. In this case, this king will allow it. You plan to build a law school and separate the law school from the government school. Pang Yuqian was overjoyed when he heard the words, and he said, Your Highness is really benevolent and wise. Thank you for your grace. You don't have to thank me first. Since this king promised you to establish a law school, you can't be a tortoise when this king is attacked by the Confucians in the future. Xiao Ming said, he promised Pang Yuqian naturally to check and balance the dominance of the Confucian family. Happening in fact, for Xiao Ming, the situation he most hopes to see is that Confucianism is used by him, allowing Confucianism to implement the new Confucianism set by him, and completely change the way of thinking of the nation for thousands of years. But his Confucianism is the basis of the Great Yu Kingdom. He is now only occupying the land of the small king Zhao, and he cannot change the entire Confucian class at all, so he can only temporarily engage in 100 schools of thought to check and balance the Confucian class and the fief. After all, there is no medicine for curing diseases too much. Chapter 469 King Yuan arrives. The atmosphere of facing exams gradually became stronger in Bowen College. The two inspected the location of the examination room, determined the order of the examination room, and this time they left the Bowen Academy. Along the way, Pang Yuqian was naturally excited. Xiao Ming agreed to his request, which was equivalent to agreeing with the doctrine he respected, which was more important to him than anything else. Moreover, he was able to carry forward the ideas of legalists in the law school. This is probably the most promising moment for legalists in the past 1,000 years. Seeing that Pang Yuqian was so excited, Xiao Ming couldn't help shaking his head. In fact, the legalist thought was very straightforward, that is, to govern the country according to the law, and not to show favoritism. This is very appropriate in the law. Even if Pang Yuqian does not advocate jurists, he will establish a law school to cultivate talents in the field of law. Now that he has achieved his purpose and has received Pang Yuqian's gratitude, Xiao Ming is the one who really benefits. And now that Pang Yuqian is standing with him, someone will come out as a shield against pedantic Confucian scholars. However, When he thought about the doctrines that Peng Yukin respected, he suddenly remembered the two people he recommended, Zhan Xingcheng and Chang Yuchen. From these two people, he saw some characteristics of legalists, and they were all cold-faced and ruthless, so he asked, Peng Xiaofu, is it Zhan Xingcheng and Chang Yuchen? Speaking of this, Peng Yukin's face tightened, and he said, Your Highness, although the lower officials have selfish intentions, they will never be fooled in the selection of talents. Zhan Xingcheng and Chang Yuchen do not respect the doctrines of legalism, but have some ideas about the doctrines of various schools. Long, take the essence and get rid of the dregs. Because of this, the lower official and the two have a common topic. Xiao Ming nodded. Peng Yukin's selfishness was only to hope that there could be a living soil for the philosophical thinking. Xiao Ming didn't mind this. Europe has its own renaissance, and the Great Yu Kingdom also has its own unique renaissance. This academic contention, officials no longer believe in Confucianism as the direction of his current efforts, although he understands that this is a bit difficult. The two separated halfway. Peng Yukin returned to the mansion, and he went to the palace. Peng Yukin's words in Bowen College also made him panic a little bit, but he was really worried that the Kong family in Quefu would make a move. These people are similar to the current public knowledge professors, who spit all day and night, and can't just kill them casually. Otherwise, if a big hat is buckled, it is estimated that the court will be fried, and the world's Confucian scholars will stab him in the spine. Headache. Xiao Ming suddenly realized that it is easy to destroy the enemy physically, but it is really difficult to change the enemy mentally. However, he still has at least some advantages, that is, the position of public opinion is in his own hands. Thinking of this, he feels that he should continue to strengthen the influence of the newspaper in the fief from now on. He wants government agencies to order newspapers, and all officials must read newspapers. In addition to reporters going to the countryside to read newspapers, officials will also go to village production teams to convey the policy ideas in the newspapers, and resolutely place their ideological positions on the ground. Grab it from Confucianism and prevent the common people from being poisoned by harmful thoughts. With an uneasy mood, Xiao Ming returned to the palace. As soon as he arrived at the door, he saw a graceful carriage parked at the door. There was a big Yang character written on the carriage. Seeing this character, Xiao Ming knew that King Yang had arrived. Entering the palace, Zhu Wan greeted her with a displeased face. She complained, Your Highness, King Yang is really rude. The servants said that His Highness was not here, but he still broke into the palace. He didn't do anything to you, did he? Xiao Ming asked. That's not true. His Royal Highness King Yang just went directly to the main hall and asked us to serve tea. Zhu Wan said. Xiao Ming nodded. That's good, at least it means that King Yang still cares about this king. If you were in other places, he would have been a mess. King Yang was reckless and impulsive. It is not easy for him to be able to behave properly when he came to the palace. Otherwise, according to his personality, he would have already started to molest a maid. Going straight to the main hall, Xiao Ming saw King Yang, who was drinking tea and waiting. Seeing Xiao Ming coming over, King Yang was very happy. He quickly got up to meet him and said, Nephew, you are back. Uncle Wang has been waiting here for a long time. The fourth emperor came from a long way, but I hope that the emperor will forgive me if my nephew lost his way. Xiao Ming said politely. King Yang patted Xiao Ming's back with a big hand, and said with a loud laugh, My nephew is out of the question. This time, my nephew will give the musket to the uncle to bring back, which means that the nephew has been letting the uncle go in the heart. That's natural. When I was in Chang'an, my nephew promised my uncle, and naturally I didn't dare to shirk the musket issue. Xiao Ming said with a smile. King Yang always advocated violence. War horses are very fond of weapons, and now that he has artillery and muskets, he is even more obsessed with these two powerful weapons. If it wasn't for this, he wouldn't be so polite to Xiao Ming at all. This time, Xiao Ming asked King Yang to come, one for the handover of the muskets, and the other for the eradication of Shanxi merchants. This Shanxi merchant is located in the gap between the fiefs of Lianwang and Yongwang. Relying on a piece of land that does not care about it, it is convenient for the barbarians to sell war materials from the Great Yu Kingdom. Over the years, the Shanxi merchants have become very rich at this time. If these Jin merchants are eliminated, firstly, they can cut off the source of the barbarians obtaining war materials, and secondly, they can divide the Jin merchants and eat them, and divide up the wealth of these traitors Jin merchants. The most important thing is that once the Shanxi merchants are eradicated, his Chamber of Commerce can take advantage of the loopholes. Li Keihun has repeatedly said that the trade with the grasslands cannot be opened, and the reason is that these Shanxi merchants are swaying. King Yang laughed and said to Xiao Ming, If that's the case, let's go and see these muskets. Uncle Wang can't wait any longer. Uncle, don't worry, this king still has something to discuss with Uncle, Xiao Ming said. King Yong had already stood up. But now he sat down again, and he asked, my nephew, please speak. I wonder if Uncle Wang knows about the 9 major Shanxi merchants? Xiao Ming said with a smile. 9 major Shanxi merchants? King Yong's expression became obviously stiff, and he said, my nephew asked why this is, but the uncle knows about the Shanxi merchants. Xiao Ming continued, so, does Uncle Wang know that these 9 Shanxi merchants are now collaborating with the enemy and betraying the country and selling war materials to the barbarians? King Yong's face suddenly turned ugly. He knew it, and he couldn't help asking, what is the meaning of this, nephew? Could it be that you suspect that this king and the Shan merchants are collaborating with the enemy and betraying the country? Uncle Wang has been thinking too much? My nephew has always believed in my uncle, but King Liang may not. Now that my nephew got the news of the Shanxi merchants collaborating with the enemy, the father and the emperor must also know about it. When the royal father gives an order, it will be difficult for the uncle to do it. Xiao Ming smiled. Chapter 470 Secret Trading. The atmosphere in the main hall was a little serious at this time. King Yong's brows were furrowed, and he looked like he was ready to get angry at any time. It was not without reason that these Shanxi merchants were able to get along between Yongdi and Liangdi. Both he and Lian Wang were very aware of the existence of these Shanxi merchants. Also know what they are doing. It's just that these Shanxi merchants are very generous, giving him hundreds of thousands of taels of silver every year, not to mention jewelry and beauties. Because of this, he naturally turned a blind eye. Who would have trouble with Yinzi? As long as these Shanxi merchants did not harm their interests, it was enough. But now these Shanxi merchants are obviously making a fuss, and Xiao Ming finds out these Shanxi merchants really cooperated with the enemy and betrayed the country? King Yong asked involuntarily. He never cared about what business these Shanxi merchants and barbarians did, but only how much money he could get from these Shanxi merchants. Xiao Ming nodded and told King Yong what the secret guard had gotten. HMPH, these profiteers. This king once told them not to go too far, but I didn't expect them to secretly do these things without this king. My nephew is at ease, and this king will clean up them when he returns. King Yong said carelessly. When Xiao Ming heard the words, he sneered. He believed what King Yong said. It was a ghost, and it was not a matter of a day or two for the kings of the Great Yu Kingdom to govern themselves. In fact, he understood that moving out of Xiao Wangsun would not be able to make King Yong submit. The most likely thing King Yong would do at that time would be to kill some people and use it to recharge. What should these Shan merchants do? It's just a facelift. Instead of using imperial power to oppress, it is better to talk about interests directly. After all, whether it is King Yong or King Liang, these are the vassal kings who guard the frontier. 4th Emperor. Uncle, you and I both understand people, so you don't have to use these words to send your nephew away. Xiao Ming picked up the tea and took a slow sip. King Yong said dissatisfiedly, my nephew, what do you mean by this? Did the uncle promise you? What do you still want, uncle? If the uncle is really sincere, the nephew will send 3,000 cavalry back with the uncle this time. If you don't see the heads of these 9 major Shanxi merchants, the nephew will not believe it. Xiao Ming blew the steam of the tea, and King Yong's face turned dark. From King Yong's point of view, Xiao Ming was a little too far ahead. How could he endure this fiery temper without waiting for King Yong to get angry? Xiao Ming continued, my nephew understands what the uncle is worried about. Isn't it just the hundreds of thousands of taels of silver every year? As long as the uncle can eradicate this gang of Shanxi merchants, the silver nephew will give you the money. Yes. King Yong's complexion gradually returned to normal, and he said puzzledly, my nephew, Uncle Wang, I have always been outspoken. If I say something offended, Uncle Wang does not believe that you are doing this for the sake of the world of the Great Yu Kingdom. After all, you are just a person. A small vassal king, but this world belongs to the crown prince. It is the prince and the prince who should worry about you, not you. Why do you have to work so hard? You can't say that your credit will be high in the future. But this credit is poison. The more credit you have, the sooner you will die. We vassal kings only need to take care of our own 1/3 of an acre of land, and some people are unhappy when their hands are stretched too long. It is said that Uncle 4th Emperor is brave and reckless, but it may not be the case when your nephew sees it. Xiao Ming said in surprise. King Yong's words were exactly what most vassal kings were thinking today. He pondered for a while and said, Uncle Wang's words, it makes sense. That's what my nephew thinks now. So this eradication of Shanxi merchants is for the Great Yu Kingdom and for myself, oh? King Yong exclaimed, How did this Shanxi merchant provoke his nephew? Because these Shan merchants take goods from this king's chamber of commerce, but sell them to barbarians 4 times or even 5 times, and also obstruct the business of the chamber of commerce on the grasslands. How can this king bear it? Although the Great Yu Kingdom forbids businessmen to trade with the barbarians in private, if there's Xiao Wangxun's handwriting, they can still do business with the barbarians, but these transactions cannot involve iron, saltpeter and other materials, just like the barbarians have restrictions on war horses. However, the border trade court has always imposed heavy taxes, which also led to the general trade without smuggling to make money. It is because of this that Shanxi merchants made a fortune. Now that Xiao Ming has been treated as a royal businessman, he does not need to pay taxes. He naturally does not want to let go of the lucrative border trade. After all, the barbarians are also very powerful, jewelry, and as far as he knows, the nobles among the barbarians also love luxury goods, and the style of comparison is prevalent, which is an opportunity for him. After all, even if it is a war, trade can still be carried out. It turns out that, these Shanxi merchants are indeed going too far. King Yuang said. Xiao Ming smiled and continued, Shanxi merchants are so fascinated by their interests that they dare to sell anything. How can this be compared to the King's Hao Chamber of Commerce? At least my nephew will not sell saltpeter, sulfur and other materials, so destroying these Shanxi merchants will not only it can prevent the Shanxi merchants from fattening up the barbarians, and let the nephew's merchants take control of the border trade, and the uncle can also take money generously. Right, King Yuang was tempted. He kept these Shanxi merchants just for the sake of money. Now Xiao Ming promises to make it up for him. What's more, he has always been unhappy with Liang Wang, and these Shanxi merchants are also for Liang Wang's money more than what was given to him. What annoyed him the most was the Battle of Jizhao. King Liang just watched his Jizhao besieged, without any intention of helping. Thinking of this, he nodded. Since that's the case, this busy uncle will help, and it's time to try the power of this matchlock gun. The nephew is waiting for the good news. Xiao Ming felt relieved when he found a thug for himself. It can not only crack down on these Shanxi merchants' traitors' behavior, but also expand their own trade. This action against Shanxi merchants is a matter of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. After saying this, King Yuang was about to receive the arquebus. He was so impatient that he wished he could equip his troops with the arquebus. Now taking King Yang to the warehouse at King's Hao Wharf, the two went directly to the warehouse dedicated to storing arms. The arms he traded with other vassal kings are all here, and layers of soldiers are guarding it. According to the last agreement, Xiao Ming wanted to produce 2,000 arquebuses for King Yuang. Now this batch of arquebuses has already been produced, just waiting for King Yang to come and receive them. This time, King Yuang arrived in King's Hao with silver and his personal guards. Just for this uncle, 4th Emperor, I will hand over these arquebuses to you, Xiao Ming said, and King Yang had to accompany him when he came in person. The armory was full of boxes of arquebuses. Seeing these arquebuses, King Yuang's eyes lit up, and he nodded with satisfaction to Xiao Ming. Thank you, nephew. Come here, take the silver from the cargo ship. Move down. As he spoke, King Yuang wandered around the armory. When he saw the artillery in the armory, his eyes became hot and he said, Nephew, can these 20 artillery pieces also be given to Uncle Wang? Chapter 471 The Death of Dr. Sun. Inside the ordnance warehouse, a row of 20 artillery pieces lay quietly inside. These artillery pieces were a batch of export-type artillery pieces produced by the military workshop Uncle Wang. These cannons are custom-made by King Liang and King Zhao. They will be delivered soon. I'm afraid they can't be sold to Uncle Wang. Xiao Ming smiled. King Yang is quite disappointed. Now every vassal king is hoarding firearms to strengthen his own strength. In comparison, he has fallen behind a lot. Especially when he learned that these artillery pieces were sold to King Liang, he felt a sense of crisis even more. Although Xiao Ming was very dissatisfied with seeing artillery sold to King Liang, he understood that this nephew always sold arms when he had money, and he even suspected that if the barbarians offered high prices, Xiao Ming would also sell arms. Thinking of this, King Yuang rolled his eyes. Nephew, we belong to the royal family. Naturally, this business is also related to relatives. Why don't you sell this batch of artillery pieces to the uncle first? How about you produce another batch of artillery pieces for him? These cannons were deliberately placed in the warehouse by Xiao Ming. In fact, they were not prepared for King Liang, but he deliberately set them up for King Yuang. Because King Yuang's fief was really a treasure land with rich mineral resources. In order to obtain the mining rights of these mineral resources, he had to come up with some crooked ideas, so he said, it's not easy for the uncle to want artillery, and the nephew will produce another batch for the uncle. If it doesn't work, the nephew will join the army. Allocate a batch of artillery to the uncle. Really? King Yuang was overjoyed. Xiao Ming nodded and said vaguely, this time King Liang purchased 400 artillery pieces from this king, so why should my nephew take care of my uncle? 400 gates? King Yuang was shocked, and he immediately said, my nephew, the uncle has more gates than King Liang, and the uncle has 500 gates. 500 gates? Fourth Emperor uncle, are these 500 gates not cheap? Xiao Ming said seriously, it is said that there is not much money in the imperial treasury, and these 500 artillery pieces cost at least 6 or 7 million taels of silver. This, King Yuang suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. Xiao Ming talked about his pain point, and now he really doesn't have much money. He suddenly remembered the last time Xiao Ming asked him to use coal mines to counter the artillery, so he said, my dear nephew, you really can't do it. Circle some coal mines. After experiencing the shortage of iron ore, Xiao Ming now has a deep resentment for iron ore, and the steam engine will be put into use soon, and the consumption of coal will also be greatly increased. Obviously he couldn't satisfy him. However, he did not want to spend too much manpower on mining, but was prepared to exchange industrial products for mineral resources so that other vassal lords could provide him with ores. After all, even if they mine mines under their fiefs, these mines will still be under their jurisdiction at that time, and they may be taken back at any time if they turn their backs on them. So he might as well just name and use artillery in exchange for ore, so that these vassal kings can become his mine owners. So he said, Uncle Wang, my nephew is really powerless, and there are only a few fiefs, so why are there so many people mining? Since Uncle Wang sincerely wants to buy artillery, why don't you just exchange coal and iron ore? Coal and iron ore? King Yuang was a little embarrassed. He said, my nephew, Uncle Wang has a few coal mines, but there are very few iron ore. King Yuang's fiefs include today's Hebei area. In modern times, the iron ore reserves in this place are second to none in the country. It is precisely because of this that there is a steel base there. This King Yuang is really in Baoshan, and he does not know the true face of Baoshan. After smiling, Xiao Ming said, Uncle Wang is already wrong. There are more subway mines in Uncle Wang than coal mines. If Uncle Wang doesn't believe it, nephew can help him find a few, but the mining of this iron ore is not enough. Only the uncle can come by himself. King Yuang has always been a person who relies on mountains to eat mountains and water to drink water. He can sell coal and iron for money, why not do it? He excitedly said, is this true, nephew, really? Xiao Ming said. King Yuang nodded and said, if it's true as the nephew said, the uncle will send people to mine mines in exchange ore for artillery. Uncle Four Emperors is extremely forthright. Okay, that's the deal. Xiao Ming's eyes narrowed. His first step plan has been completed, and he has also exhausted his efforts to make the Great Yu Kingdom a source of resources for King Zhao. Thought for this reason, he doesn't care if it is a hostile vassal king. After all, sometimes this kind of relationship between countries is hostile and mutual use. For example, in modern state-to-state relations, while shouting and shouting, the private economy is still hot. This is the so-called political cold and economic hot. After negotiating this matter, Xiao Ming carefully calculated an account for King Yuang. The mineral resources to be exchanged for these 500 artillery pieces are no different from the contemporary exchange of 100 million shirts for a Boeing. In order to buy artillery, King Yuang may have to completely become a big mine owner. At this time, the king of Chu has become the owner of Hu's Cotton Manor, providing cotton for King Zhao. Continuously after the transaction was completed, Xiao Ming accompanied King Yang to play in King Zhao for a few days. After letting him see the changes in King Zhao, he reluctantly returned to the fief. After King Yuang left, Xiao Ming continued to plan the future of the fief for him. The resources in the world are limited. If he eats more, others will eat less. Therefore, in order to eat more, the problem of eating less is constantly filthy among countries. The prosperity of the contemporary West is based on a high degree of control over the resources of life. Xiao Ming is well aware of this, so he is preparing to start a journey to make the world work for King Zhao. Now it is his turn to exchange high-tech products for 100 million yuan shirt. While he was busy planning the resource intake plan, an unexpected event suddenly made the atmosphere of King Zhao solemn. Medical officer Sun is dead. When Pang Yukin said these words, his expression was solemn. Dead? How did you die? Xiao Ming exclaimed in shock. Pang Yukan said, according to the verification of the government office, it is certain that Dr. Sun was poisoned by arsenic for the time being, and now it is rumored that Dr. Sun was forced to death by His Highness. Your Highness. The lower official suspects that someone has helped to slander His Highness and put pressure on His Highness. Xiao Ming looked cold. He just asked Dr. Sun to go back and think about it. It was only a few days before Dr. Sun died. Not only Pang Yukan, he also felt very strange. Tell me about it. Xiao Ming was a little irritable. Although he was dissatisfied with Dr. Sun's rigidity, no matter what, Dr. Sun was a good doctor, and he was heartbroken to die like this for no reason. Medical Officer Sun is highly respected in Qingzhou City. After this incident, Confucian scholars in Qingzhou talked a lot, pointing out that His Royal Highness's Bowen Academy is a heresy, and the implication is that His Highness's Bowen Academy has broken the rules, is not in line with the ancestral family law, violates the law of nature, and is outrageous. Chapter 472 Public Opinion Aggressive. Presumptuous. Xiao Ming was furious. When is it my king's turn to quit these serious things, and the Confucian scholar who talks nonsense all day makes irresponsible remarks? Pang Yukan looked carefully at Xiao Ming, but Xiao Ming's anger this time made him see some of the majesty that a vassal king should have. He bowed and said, Your Highness, calm down. These Confucian scholars have never looked at Bowen College from the beginning to the end. They have been studying sages and sages hard, only to be named in the golden list one day, so in their view, His Royal Highness encouraged scholars to learn such wonderful skills. Prostitutes and cleverness are the way of the lower three, and what they follow is the right way in the world. It's absurd. Can't they see the development of Qingzhou now? Are all of them blind? Xiao Ming was extremely angry. The death of Medical Officer Sun had already made him a little irritable. Now these Confucian scholars are taking advantage of the topic. How can he not be angry? However, the most important thing now is to find out the cause of Dr. Sun's death. He said, these Confucian scholars can't make waves. The most important thing for you now is to find out the cause of Dr. Sun's death. Does he really value the inheritance of master and apprentice more than his life? Is it important? Speaking of this, Xiao Ming suddenly felt a sense of frustration. He did not expect the power of deep-rooted concepts to be so powerful. Yes. Pang Yukan nodded. He hesitated and said, Your Highness, do you want to arrest these Confucian scholars who spread rumors and cause trouble? After hesitating for a while, he said, No need, let them continue to make trouble. It is best to let them make a little noise, otherwise this king will have no reason to clean them up. Just letting these scholars slander and belittle His Highness may damage His Highness's reputation. Pang Yukan was a little worried. Xiao Ming laughed at this time. Pang Chang, she has been thinking too much. If this isn't Chang'an, this king will be worried, but don't forget what the foundation of Qingzhou is. Now that there are no clansmen and nobles, this king relies on the common people. And these Confucian scholars are of no use to the fief. His Royal Highness said that as long as the people are stable, these scholars can't make trouble. Pang Yukan said. After all, he turned to leave. Watching Pang Yukan out of the main hall, Xiao Ming sent Li San to the palace at this time. There are secret guards monitoring everywhere in Qingzhou. Just ask him what the root of the matter is. But just when the servant was about to go out, Li San had already arrived at the palace. His Royal Highness asked the subordinate to come here for Medical Officer Sun, right? Li San said. Xiao Ming nodded. Since you already know, let's talk about what you know now. Li San nodded and said to Xiao Ming, His Royal Highness, Dr. Sun did commit suicide by taking poison, and before taking the poison, he told his family that he didn't want to offend His Highness, and he didn't want to be criticized by the doctor, so he could only die. And it is precisely these words that reached the ears of Confucian scholars, and these Confucian scholars discussed His Highness. So it is. Xiao Ming sighed faintly. Why is this necessary? Li San said, however, Your Highness, Dr. Sun's suicide may not be the responsibility of His Highness. The lower official thinks that this matter has a lot to do with Dr. Sun's senior brother, because the day before Dr. Sun committed suicide, Dr. Sun's senior brother Dong Horn visited Dr. Sun, and according to the lower official's understanding, the two broke up unhappy. Yes, you have made progress now, and you have figured out the ins and outs of things right away. Xiao Ming comforted in his heart. Wang Zhuan is the master and Li San is the master. The two of them cooperate with each other to be the complete secret guard. In the past 2 years, he invested millions of taels to build the secret guard, and now the real Qingzhou City finally has his eyeliner. His Royal Highness, the official said that he would not disappoint His Highness. Li San said happily, He was ashamed and brave when Wang Zhuan repeatedly stole the limelight during this period of time. He has been desperately training his subordinates, and now he has a firm control over the fief. Well, you immediately hand over the clues you got to Pang Xiaofu, and let him arrest Dong Haoren immediately. Xiaoming said. Li San nodded and turned to leave. Xiaoming also walked out of the main hall at this time. At this time, there was a killing intent in his heart. He was not afraid of the Battle of Kangzhou, nor was he afraid of the Battle of Jizhou. Could he be afraid of this deep-rooted feudal ignorance? Is it the lingering mouth of Confucian scholars in the world? He was surprised by Dr. Sun's death, but now that someone wants to use this to criticize his policies, his thinking is too simple. If necessary, he wouldn't mind having a head-to-head confrontation with these Confucian scholars, depending on whether it was their mouths or his guns. He just kept his tolerance for these Confucian scholars for the past 2 years just because he didn't want to add to the controversy. But the death of Dr. Sun this time touched him a lot, and he felt that it was necessary to beat these Confucian scholars. But before that, he must deal with the matter of Dr. Sun, otherwise his medical school will be finished. And his army will not have the institution of battlefield medical care. Frowning his brows, Xiaoming sighed. He felt that it was necessary to establish an astronomy college in Bowen College. In his opinion, this is the most beneficial weapon against feudal ideology, but he will not use this weapon for the time being, but will use it when necessary, because once he introduces astronomy, it means denying the divine authority of the monarchy. Thought at that time, the most frightened person is probably not the Confucianism, but the Emperor Xiao Wangxun of the dynasty. At that time, these Confucian scholars contributed to the flames, and Xiaoming estimated that it was no different from rebellion. Therefore, preparations are necessary for him, and preparations must be secret. Once he has the opportunity, he can publish this astronomical knowledge, and even use this astronomical knowledge as a weapon. At that time, in this regard, he already has a plan, which is very risky and bold, because once it is successful, the Confucius family in Quefu may be able to use it for him. While he was thinking, Li San had already brought the news to Pang Yukin. After getting the news, Pang Yukin immediately ordered Dong Haoren to be arrested. He understood Xiaoming's thoughts. He wanted to rectify the unhealthy behavior of the fief doctors, and Dong Haoren was the key point of this incident at this time. Among a medical officer in the south of Qingzhou City, Dong Haoren was sitting opposite to 3 people dressed as scholars. One of the scholars said, "Sun medical officer is righteous. In order to maintain the teachings of Confucianism, he would rather die than submit to the king of Qi. He is a role model for my generation." Exactly. This Bowen College has long been unpopular, and it has been cast aside for me and other Confucian scholars. Only such absurd things can happen in the land of Qilu, in the hometown of sages. Now many absurd things have been written and sent to Quefu, asking Mr. Kong, "Say something for us Confucian scholars, that is, why are we Confucian scholars unable to take the exam to enter the officialdom for this national political reform? What qualifications do those scholars in Bowen College who forget their ancestors have compared to us?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 473. P.S. The network is disconnected today, and the update will be later. Sorry, I will update a chapter first. In addition, the snail will prepare red envelopes after the chapter tonight. Students who subscribe to the chapter can grab it. A faint herbal smell pervades the medical hall. Dong Haoren held a teacup in his hand and narrowed his eyes slightly. After Dr. Sun died, he was indeed frightened for a while, but these Confucian scholars who came to visit calmed his heart because so many Confucian scholars supported him in this matter. It proved that what he did was right, and it was his junior and junior brothers who were wrong. Everyone is right. We have no opinion on the reform of King Qi, but this reform can't break our rules, whether it's the rules of the medical center or the rules of this officialdom. Do you think so? Dong Haoren said indignantly, "That's right, that is, there is no such thing as King Qi in any feudal kingdom. We have been enduring it, but this time King Qi is really going too far." The 4 of you said each other, and the more you talked, the more excited you became. At this moment, there was a sudden bang. The door of the medical hall was pushed open by a group of tiger-like soldiers, and a general led by the general strode into the medical hall. He asked in the main hall, "Who is Dong Haoren?" With so many soldiers suddenly barging in, the medical hall was immediately silent, and the faces of the 3 Confucian scholars were as pale as paper with fright. At this moment, They all stood up and pretended to be seeing a doctor. Dong Horan was so frightened that he trembled all over. He looked at the three Confucian scholars who had been stubborn just now. Now the three of them didn't seem to know him at all. I am. Seeing that these Confucian scholars could not help him, Dong Horan could only admit it. In that case, come with us. The general snorted coldly and gestured to the soldiers behind him. The soldiers immediately stepped forward and escorted Dong Horan out of the hospital. Dong Horan was taken away, and the three scholars breathed a sigh of relief looking at each other. One of the Confucian students said, "The big thing is not good. Now King Qi is really angry. How can this be good?" The other two Confucian students were also panicked. Another Confucian student said, "Let's go back and tell Zizian about this, and let him make up his mind." The three nodded and walked out together. At this time, Dong Horan was escorted directly to the Qingzhou government office, where he met Pang Yukin and King Qi. "His Royal Highness, Dong Horan has brought it here." Xiao Ming and Pang Yukin turned to look at Dong Horan at this time, looked up and down. Xiao Ming sat down in the main seat and said, "You are Dong Horan, and Dr. Sun was forced to death by you, His Royal Highness. Dr. Sun is Kaoman's junior brother. How could Kaoman kill his own junior brother? Your Highness, wronged. Dong Horan knelt down and cried bitterly. "Injustice? In that case, what did you say to Dr. Sun before he died?" Xiao Ming asked. His image in Qingzhou has always been kind. He felt that if someone forgot that he would kill people, this time it was up to Dr. Sun to deal with it. Since then, he has been pushed by people with a heart to make him widely discussed among the people. He had to figure this out, and at the same time severely punish those who took the opportunity to make trouble in the fief. Dong Horan's face changed suddenly. He didn't expect that the matter of seeing Dr. Sun would be known to King Qi. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and he defended. Kaoman just told his junior brother some old things. As for why the junior brother committed suicide, Kaoman very confused too. "You really don't cry without seeing the coffin. This king knows exactly what you did in the Sun family. Did you forget who this Qingzhou belongs to? Back then, the four great families of Qingzhou could be eradicated by this king. You thought this king would. Are you concerned about you practicing medicine?" While speaking, Xiao Ming's tone suddenly turned tough. This incident really made him a little annoyed. He was dedicated to promoting medicine, but now these people are obstructing it for their own selfishness. Dong Horan's body froze for a moment. He recalled again the bloody February in Qingzhou 2 years ago. The Qingzhou nobles were strangled almost overnight. Even now, some dried black blood can still be seen occasionally in front of the lotus pond outside Qingzhou City. His Royal Highness, Kaoman deserves to die. Kaoman deserves to die. Kaoman's lord is blinded. Kaoman shouldn't persecute junior brother. Please spare your life, Your Highness, spare your life. Dong Horan suddenly understood at this moment that the amiable King Qi in the eyes of Qingzhou people once also kills without blinking an eye. Isn't Xiao Ming bringing this up to tell him that he can kill him at any time? At this time, Pang Yukin shook his head helplessly. He finally understood why Xiao Ming wanted to arrest Dong Horan. He didn't need torture to extract a confession. Now, just a simple threat was enough to make Dong Horan honest. Now the people of Qingzhou are happy to live in peace, and no one wants to lose their lives for no reason. Dong Horan was terrified. The reason why he was dissatisfied with Xiao Ming for setting up a medical school was that his business in the medical school had more than tripled and quadrupled over the past 2 years. The increased population of the merchants in Qingzhou made him a lot of money. It was precisely because he wanted to monopolize the dividend that he forced Medical Officer Sun not to agree to this matter. And when he faced the fact that he had saved Dr. Sun's life back then, under the dilemma, Dr. Sun was the most short-sighted. Forgive you, who can spare Dr. Sun? Xiao Ming said angrily. This king has thoroughly investigated the cause and effect of this matter. If you hadn't threatened him with your life-saving grace back then, he would have. How can you commit suicide? What's the difference between you and murder? Come here. Put Dong Horan in the prison, and at noon tomorrow, Dong Shi will be executed as Royal Highness, Your Highness. Dong Horan only felt his whole head numb for a while, and when he came back to his senses, he rolled and crawled to Xiao Ming's feet and shouted, His Royal Highness, spare your life, Your Highness, spare your life. This matter was not intentional by the grass people. It was Zizian's idea. If it wasn't for him, Kaoman wouldn't have persecuted his junior brother. His Highness spared his life. Zizian? Xiao Ming looked at Pang Yukin. Where's this Zizian sacred? Pang Yukin explained, His Royal Highness, this Zizian is the first Confucian scholar in Qingzhou, and he claims to have studied under Qihao. Xiao Ming's eyes narrowed. This thing is interesting, His Royal Highness. Quihao is a famous Confucian in the Great Yu Kingdom. There are a lot of Confucian scholars who have studied under him. There are also a group of Confucian scholars in Qingzhou who visit Quihao every year when they go to Beijing to take the exam. In the past 2 years, Quihao it seems to be more and more fond of our Qingzhou Confucian scholars, and take good care of Qingzhou Confucian scholars. Pang Yukin said. Xiao Ming nodded. He looked at Dong Horan. Is everything you said true? It's absolutely true. The grass people dare not make any false words. Dong Horan's face was pale. If that's the case, how dare you confront him? Xiao Ming continued. He didn't want to make a big noise, but now it was necessary to shoot the first bird to let these Confucian scholars settle down. Chapter 474. P.S. There are only 2 chapters tonight. The internet is disconnected at home, so I can only go to the internet cafe for the Chinese New Year and have a hard time coding. Dare the grass people dare to confront each other? Dong Horan shouted as if he had grabbed a life-saving straw. He was just a doctor who opened a medical clinic, which was different from what those Confucian scholars wanted. While the 3 of them were confronting, suddenly there was a loud noise from outside the government office, and a guard came in and said, "Your Highness, there are hundreds of scholars outside, making a lot of noise, saying that they asked the government to release Dong Horan, saying, Dong Horan is innocent. Why did the government arrest him, scholar?" Xiao Ming and Pang Yukin looked at each other hearing this news. Dong Horan's expression became complicated, and in order to atone for his sins, he said carefully, "Your Highness, these people are probably the Confucian scholars who Zizian linked together. In Kaoman's opinion, it is fake for these Confucian scholars to help Kaoman. They want to. It is true that His Highness allows them to take the exam through this incident, and these Confucian scholars in Kaoman's medical center boldly said that this vacant official position should be theirs under the threat of his life." Dong Horan immediately defected. He is a smart man, and it is only for his own interests to be in sympathy with a Confucian scholar. Now that Xiao Ming was caught out and threatened his life, he did not dare to oppose Xiao Ming, and his life was the most important thing. Xiao Ming snorted coldly. In the end, this Dong Horan was nothing more than a profiteer's face, just for money. He said, "It's just right here, but this king wants to meet these Confucian scholars and see what waves they can make. After all." He and Pang Yukin went outside the door together. As the officer said, there were hundreds of young people dressed as scholars standing outside the door at this time. These young people were shouting outside the government office, looking like they were righteous for the country and the people. Seeing Xiao Ming and Pang Yukin appearing at the door, the voices of these scholars gradually disappeared, and they recognized Xiao Ming and Pang Yukin. These scholars obviously did not expect Xiao Ming to be here, and for a while they did not know what was wrong. However, the leading scholar said loudly, "His Royal Highness, I am waiting for Dong Horan's life. Dong Horan is innocent. I don't know why the government office wanted to arrest Dong Horan. His Highness has always been open-minded. I don't know why His Highness is so unhappy today. Honest thing, how do you know that Dong Horan is innocent? How do you know that this king is going to kill him?" With a questioning look, he guessed that this scholar was Zizian, who was brainwashed by Quihao. Medical officer Sun is dead, but the government has arrested Dong Horan. Isn't it to cover up medical officer Sun's suicide? Just as Xiao Ming thought, the leading scholar was Zizian. When they learned that the Qingzhou rectification examination did not have their share, the group of scholars who were advertised as Confucian scholars blew up the pot. These dissatisfied people gathered together. Among them, Zizian, who was under Quihao's family, quickly became the first scholar, and they planned with Zizian together how to change this situation at this time. The incident of medical officer Sun was giving them an opportunity. They tried to prove through this incident that their Confucian scholars were the right path, and they should also have a place in the political reform examination. Do you mean that Dr. Sun's death is the fault of this king? Xiao Ming said lightly. Kaoman dare not say it. Zizian looked frightened. Don't dare to say it? Xiao Ming sneered and looked at the scholars behind Zizian. He said, "What else do you dare? Do you think you can coerce these scholars to come and threaten the king without blaming the public?" Kaoman dare not. Zizian still looked calm. Xiao Ming immediately laughed when he saw this. He had to admit that although Confucianism had advantages and disadvantages, the advantages were also obvious. Those who were truly influenced by Confucianism also had a few hard bones, but he did not believe that Zizian was a hard worker, anyone who moves for personal gain. No one is hardcore. Who rolled his eyes and said, "This king is not going to take you for granted. Since you want Dong Horan, this king will return Dong Horan to you." After that, Xiao Ming gestured, and the officer immediately took Dong Horn out of the palace and pushed him in front of the scholar. Xiao Ming's action made Zizian's expression change a little. He thought that the government office would not let people go at all, so that they could make some noise and let the Confucius government come forward to put pressure on King Qi. But where is King Qi playing now? What are you still doing? Don't you want Dong Horn? Didn't this king give it back to you? What are you still doing? Let's go, let's go. Xiao Ming said, His Royal Highness. Even so, shouldn't His Highness say something about Sun's death? Zizian finally revealed his true purpose. What Xiao Ming was waiting for was Zizian's words. He said, Come forward, this king will explain to you. Zizian looked back at the group of scholars, and gathered up his courage to step forward and stand in front of Xiao Ming. At this time, Xiao Ming's mouth suddenly moved a few times, but he didn't hear anything then. Before he could react, Xiao Ming suddenly said to a group of scholars, I have said everything that should be said, you can ask him. After speaking, Xiao Ming entered the government office. Hearing this, a group of scholars suddenly gathered around and asked, Zizian, what did your highness say? Your highness didn't say anything. Zizian looked puzzled. How is it possible? We clearly saw his highness open his mouth. A scholar said, I saw it too, and his highness seems to be happy to say it. Another person said Zizian was very depressed. He explained again, His Royal Highness really didn't say it. I swear. Zizian, His Highness clearly opened his mouth. Why do you say he didn't say anything? Dong Horn also asked at this time. After Dong Horn said this, a bunch of scholars became more and more dissatisfied, and many of them left in anger. Zizian stood there blankly, and he had a very bad premonition, and this premonition became a reality on the second day. This day was the day when the political reform exam was released. On this list, besides the students of Bowen College, there was one more person named Zizian. Okay, this Zizian, all of us have been tricked by him. He asked us all to go to the government office to make trouble, and he didn't blame the public. It turned out that he was doing it for himself. And now their name is above. What else can be said of in front of the list? A scholar who participated in the disturbance yesterday shouted loudly, Shameless villain, His Highness must have told him about this yesterday. He still pretended to be stupid. No wonder he stopped making trouble. We all let him play bastard. We're going to kill him, this scumbag. Someone shouted, kill him to death. A kind of Confucianism was indignant at this moment. Xiao Ming stood in the corner not far away and looked at these Confucian scholars. Pang Yuqin stood beside Xiao Ming and said with a smile, Your Highness is a good diversionary plan. First let Dong Horn let the Confucian scholars have no excuse for making trouble, and pretended to say after a few words, I sent Zizian away, and then arranged for Zizian's name to appear on the exam list. Now Zizian is full of mouth and can't tell. Xiao Ming said with a smile, This is just the beginning. Through this incident, this king wants the people to see their true colors clearly. Chapter 475. P.S. During the Spring Festival, because there are a lot of things, the update will be maintained at about 2 changes. If there's more time, there will be more snails. I hope everyone understands. In addition, regarding the issue of readers responding to chapter advertisements, this is the malicious behavior of some authors. Snail has tried it, but it cannot be deleted. In the end, in order to make up for everyone, the red envelope continues, and the password Snail sends a red envelope. In the chaos of the East Market, the candidates were filled with righteous indignation because Zizian's name appeared on the list. After being extremely angry, they all went to Zizian's residence, and Zizian couldn't hide the anger in their hearts. If they didn't clean up their words, the world is all for the benefit. If they really understand the righteousness, how can Fengguo see them in times of crisis? So to deal with these hypocrites who are weak to the outside and full of benevolence and morality to the inside, it is enough to throw a bone at them. Kill each other, divide them into pieces. Xiao Mingdu smiled lightly at Pang Yuqin. Pang Yuqin nodded. His Royal Highness said, Very much. If the officialdom is full of these people, our feudal kingdom will soon become no different from the rest of the great Yu kingdom. But is the death of His Royal Highness Medical Officer Sun over? Of course not. Whether it's for Medical Officer Sun or Bowen College, we have to take advantage of this time to combat this rotten thought in Fengguo's Hong. Xiao Ming said in a deep voice, You can discuss with Fan Zheng these 2 days. By focusing on scolding Dong Horn, these quack doctors and Zizian and the rotten Confucians in the newspaper at this time, the harder the scolding, the better. It is best to put the seriousness of this matter on the interests of the common people. In this way, these people will inevitably it will become a rat crossing the street. Everyone shouts and beats. Yes, Your Highness, The lower official is very good at this. Pang Yukin smiled confidently. He used to be a speaker, and his ability to swear without swearing is first class. After agreeing on this matter, the two returned to the government office, and Pang Yukin called Fan Zheng to draft a newspaper manuscript criticizing Dong Haran and Xi Ziyan, with the intention of throwing them into the ocean of people's war. At the same time, Xi Ziyan was enjoying tea leisurely in the tea house, when a group of menacing scholars suddenly rushed in. Without waiting for Xi Ziyan to defend, these scholars beat and kicked Xi Ziyan. While beating Xi Ziyan, the scholars shouted, "Traitor! Traitor! Ouch!" Xi Ziyan was lying on the ground, punches and feet were thrown everywhere on his body. He didn't understand what happened, and couldn't explain anything, and the chasing cow eye, which usually appears soon, seems to have disappeared today, and it seems that these scholars did not relieve their hatred until they were beaten to death. The diners in the tea house watched this scene in shock, and everyone whispered, "What's going on here, and why was this man beaten?" A businessman asked. Kingzhou City is not big, and the news has always spread very quickly. It seems that someone knows the inside story. One person said, "Do you know about some scholars who made trouble in the government office yesterday?" "Of course I know. These scholars are really tired of living, and dare to ask the government for someone. Who do they think they are? If this is at the place of other vassal kings, and they don't directly chop off their heads, Our Highness is merciful and condoning. These readers, that's right, this person is Xi Ziyan, who is leading the trouble. He satirized His Highness's decree in Kingzhou. By using the suicide of Dr. Sun, he not only asked His Highness to withdraw Bowen College, but also asked His Highness to relist us businessmen as cheap household. The businessman's face flushed with anger. Deserved to be beaten to death. Another businessman suddenly said angrily, "His Royal Highness is the most wise vassal king I have ever seen, and always considers our people. The status of us merchants and craftsmen has improved now, and these poor people still think about it. Let's go back to the bad days of the past." "Bah!" the merchants in the tea house suddenly shouted, "These Confucian scholars are so deceiving. Who would like to go up to me to make up for it?" I'll go as well." The merchants all stood up, and punched Xi Ziyan, who was about to get up again. Xi Ziyan, who was punching, fell to the ground again. Some businessmen shouted, Everyone, even if this Xi Ziyan is killed, there will be a second Xi Ziyan and a third Xi Ziyan in the future. The problem now is that these scumbags always want to bring Kingzhou back to 2 years ago. The days when we were ruled by the clansmen. We finally got rid of the hard times, and now who wants to go back to such days? Our businessmen in Kingzhou should unite with the Chamber of Commerce as the center, so that these scumbags have no place to stand. That's right, let's go to the palace together and ask His Highness to severely punish these scumbags. These people are simply hiding evil intentions, and they should be cut with 1,000 swords. Go, go, go. We businessmen can no longer allow these students to practice. Let them all get out of Kingzhou. One person shouted, everyone responded, and the merchant stopped eating tea, and gathered together to go to the palace. Along the way, they invited friends and companions. The dozen or so merchants quickly became hundreds, and the hundreds soon changed became thousands. These businessmen came to the gate of the palace, knelt down one after another, and shouted, "Please, His Royal Highness King Qi, make an order for the people of Fengou in the governor mansion." Xiao Ming got the news when things appeared. He was a little shocked in his heart. In his opinion, Kingzhou City seemed to have a budding capitalist class after the deep-rooted class of Confucian scholars. In the past, these businessmen would never gather to seek justice. Now these Confucian scholars have touched their most fundamental interests, which makes the businessmen feel dissatisfied. As Royal Highness, this is a wonderful matter. We can guide these merchants to vent their anger on these rotten Confucians, and combat the arrogance of these Confucian scholars. At the same time, we can weaken the self-esteem of Confucianism among the people, and pave the way for Kingzhou to realize the contention of 100 schools of thought. Pang Yukin said excitedly. Xiao Ming smiled and nodded. His heart suddenly relaxed. He felt that he was too deeply influenced by the gentry class, and took this matter too seriously because invisibly he has cultivated a new class of interests in the fief. The first class of interest is the people of the fief, the second class is the merchant of the fief. The third is the craftsman, and the fourth it is a student of Bowen College. He said, in this case, this time we will completely make these Confucian scholars dare not mention the old system again. Since the Confucian scholars' proposition this time not only harms the interests of businessmen, but also the interests of the common people, you should emphasize this in the newspaper. Pang Yukin nodded thoughtfully. Then Xiao Ming continued, take this opportunity, This king wants everyone to understand that anyone who does not study in the fiefdom and does not study in Bowen College is not qualified to take any exams in the fiefdom after all. Xiao Ming asked Pang Yuken and Fan Zheng to continue drafting the manuscript the next day. King's Hao newspaper published an article titled "Who is to blame for the death of Dr. Sun?" The article occupies the entire homepage in this manuscript. Pang Yuken denounced Zhang Haoran for persecuting Medical Officer Sun for personal gain, which led to Medical Officer Sun committing suicide. At the same time, the article also posted the claims made by Xi Ziyan and other Confucian scholars and refuted them one by one, emphasizing the impact of these claims on the fief. Hazard. The last article proposes that scholars who have not studied in Gongshuazhong since then, or who have studied in Bowen College, are not allowed to take any exams in the fief. As soon as this manuscript was published, it immediately caused an uproar in the fief. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.